Anno's Voldigoad had grown tired. In his world, there was no challenge left, no worthy opponent, no force that could push him beyond his limits. After countless millennia of reigning supreme, he had conquered not only his realm but the very concept of existence itself. There was nothing more to accomplish. Every battle was a farce. Every rival nothing more than a fleeting speck of dust in the grand scheme of the cosmos. Even his own existence had become boring, predictable. I suppose a new world would be fitting, Enos mused, standing atop his throne in the heavenly palace, gazing out into the vast, empty expanse of the universe. His voice echoed through the ethereal halls, but no one answered. There was no need. Even the very fabric of space and time bent to his will. With a small, almost imperceptible sigh, Enos raised his hand. Ancient words, lost even to the gods of his world, slipped from his lips. The air around him shimmered, rippling as though reality itself trembled under his command. He closed his eyes, and in the next moment, the energy he unleashed was not one of destruction but creation. A spell of reincarnation, one that had never been attempted before in his reality. He would cast aside his own form, abandoning the world he had mastered for something entirely new. A fresh slate. He wasn't interested in a world of gods and demons, no. He sought something different. Something that could amuse him. Let me see, where will I go this time? In the blink of an eye, Annos vanished. The world Naruto Uzumaki knew was one of pain, loneliness, and struggle. Born an orphan and ignored by the villagers of Konaha, Naruto had always sought recognition. But despite the loud proclamations and flashy displays of his ninja techniques, his heart still ached with the emptiness of being alone. His dream of becoming Hokage was more than a mere aspiration. It was his way of seeking the approval of a world that had never given him anything. But today was different. As Naruto ran through the streets, laughing and shouting, a strange sensation washed over him. A feeling of something vast. Something ancient. It was as though the very core of his being had been touched by an invisible hand. He stumbled to a halt, feeling the familiar weight of the nine tails chakras stirring within him. But it wasn't the usual irritation or anger he felt from Kurama. No. This was something more. Something far stronger. What the hell is this? He muttered, clutching his head. The sensation was overwhelming, as though his very identity was being rewritten. And then, memories flooded in. At first, they were hazy, disjointed images, flashes of a towering, godlike figure, standing amid a battlefield that spanned across dimensions. A voice boomed, commanding the very fabric of space, time, and existence itself. A power unlike anything Naruto had ever felt before, as though the world itself bowed to this figure's will. Then, it became clear. Naruto gasped, his eyes widening in shock. The memories were not his own, they were someone else's, someone immensely powerful, someone who had lived countless lifetimes, someone who had conquered death and life itself. Enos Voldigoad. The realization hit him like a thunderclap. Enos, the demon king of tyranny, had been reincarnated into this world, into his body. Naruto's body trembled as the overwhelming power surged within him. His chakra, which had always been his greatest asset, felt insignificant in comparison to the vast ocean of energy now flowing through his veins. It wasn't just the nine tails anymore. It was the very essence of a being who could manipulate reality, time, and even existence itself. Is this me now? Naruto whispered, his voice trembling. His eyes flickered between the familiar orange of his own chakra and the unnaturally sharp, crimson glow of Enos' energy. The contrast was stark, yet the two forces blended seamlessly, becoming one. As Naruto stood there, feeling the rush of power, he realized something. He no longer felt like the lonely orphan he had always been. No longer just the struggling ninja of Konaha. No, now he was something else. Something far beyond the limits of the world he had once known. I've been reborn, he murmured, as someone greater. And with that realization came a surge of confidence. A new sense of purpose. Naruto's body crackled with power as he stood up straighter, eyes burning with a fire that surpassed any he had ever known. This world will know me, he declared, his voice deep and commanding in a way that surprised even him. The world around him seemed to bend slightly, as if reacting to his newfound power. The air grew heavier, more charged, as though the very elements themselves were bowing to his presence. Meanwhile, in the Hokage's office, Hiruzen Sarutobi sat, looking over the reports of the day. The village had been relatively peaceful lately, with only small skirmishes and missions keeping the shinobi occupied. But something had changed. The air itself felt different, as though an unseen storm was gathering on the horizon. The Hokage frowned, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Something was happening. Something that had not been there before. Naruto. Hiruzen muttered under his breath, his eyes narrowing as he felt a strange presence approaching. Naruto had not even noticed the transformation in the air around him, his focus entirely on the flood of new memories coursing through him. The teachings of Anno's Voldigoad, his mastery of magic, destruction, and the ability to rewrite the very nature of reality itself. You're not just some ordinary ninja anymore, Naruto whispered to himself, clenching his fists. You're a king. With a single thought, he activated his new power. The ground around him cracked, the chakra within him manifesting as a burst of destructive energy that erupted outward, sending shockwaves through the streets of Konaha. Buildings shook, and the villagers ran in fear, not knowing what had caused the sudden surge of power. But Naruto, Annos, didn't care. His laughter rang out, rich and filled with an ancient confidence. This world doesn't know what it's in for. He was no longer just a kid dreaming of becoming Hokage. No, he had ascended beyond that. He was now a force to be reckoned with, someone who could change the very world with the flick of his wrist. And as Naruto began to walk forward, his eyes glowing with an overwhelming crimson light, he could feel the entire world trembling before him. The sun shone brightly overhead, but beneath that light, there was a shadow, his shadow, growing ever larger. The village of Konaha, the entire ninja world, would soon learn that a new king had risen, one who wielded power beyond comprehension, and who would stop at nothing to reshape the world in his own image. Naruto's steps were deliberate, each one resonating with the weight of untold power. The villagers of Konaha scattered as he walked, instinctively sensing the immense presence emanating from him. He could feel their fear, their confusion, but he wasn't concerned with them. Not yet. The memories of Annos Voldigoad settled into him like a mantle, each one reinforcing the realization that his old self, the foolish, naive boy who had longed for recognition, was gone. The Naruto who once struggled to be acknowledged was now a king, a force of destruction and rebirth. All these years, all the pain, Naruto muttered under his breath. His voice, once filled with childish enthusiasm, now carried an edge, an ancient resonance. It's time to rewrite everything. His eyes flared with the power of his new identity. He could already feel the nine tails, Kurama, stirring inside him. But this time, it wasn't with the same rage that had once defined their relationship. No, Kurama could feel the change too. The sheer scale of Naruto's new power left the beast cautious, unsure how to respond. You. What have you become? Kurama's voice echoed inside Naruto's mind, hesitant but full of curiosity. The immense chakra now flowing through Naruto's body was unlike anything the fox had ever encountered. Naruto's lips curled into a grin. I'm not the boy you knew anymore, Kurama. I've become something more. The fox's chakra pulsed within him, but it seemed to bow to the force of Enno's power. Feeling dwarfed by it, Kurama remained silent, uncertain how to handle this new version of his host. Naruto's smile widened, and without a second thought, he spread his palm outwards. The energy within him swirled, and the world around him seemed to bend to his will. With a simple thought, he tore through the sky. A gaping rift formed, splitting the heavens above. Time seemed to slow, bending to his whims. He could feel the presence of every living thing in Konaha, each individual so insignificant in comparison to the vastness of his power. The villagers, the shinobi, even the Hokage, all of them mere ants beneath the shadow of a god. Naruto's eyes burned crimson as he concentrated. With a single motion, the rift in the sky closed with a thunderous crack. And the world seemed to sigh in relief, only to fall back into an eerie silence. What is that power? The Hokage muttered, his eyes wide with both fear and awe. Hiruzen stood at the window of his office, watching the destruction unfold. He had felt it, the immense chakra surge, the violent rip through reality itself. It wasn't like anything he had ever encountered before. This wasn't just Naruto's chakra. This was something more, something incomprehensible. Could it be? No. Hiruzen whispered to himself. It can't be. Not Naruto. But the deep, resonating force was undeniable. Whatever had happened to Naruto, it was far beyond anything the old Hokage had ever anticipated. If he was to have any hope of understanding this new power, he needed to confront Naruto directly. But how? He had seen the boy grow from a troubled, misfit child into the resilient ninja he had become. But this was something else entirely. Naruto stood at the center of the village, his body exuding power. Yet his gaze was calm. He could feel the weight of the entire village pressing in on him. He could hear the whispers of the civilians hiding in their homes, the shouts of the shinobi preparing for an impending confrontation. But none of it fazed him. He was beyond this world's boundaries now. With a flick of his wrist, Naruto summoned a powerful gust of wind that uprooted several trees in the nearby forest. His energy was still surging, and the sensation of it pouring through him was intoxicating. It was as though the entire world was a puppet, and he was the master of its strings. His gaze turned toward the Hokage's tower, where he could sense the old man's presence. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the seventh Hokage, one of the few men in the village who still treated him like family. But now, even he was nothing compared to the power he wielded. "Old man, you don't need to worry," Naruto muttered to himself, a chuckle slipping from his lips. "I'll make this world kneel to me." At the Hokage's office, Hiruzen was already preparing for the inevitable confrontation. His mind raced with strategies. What could he possibly do against this new Naruto? Could anyone in the village hope to stop him? "At this rate, we'll have no choice but to treat him as an enemy," Hiruzen said aloud, though his heart twisted at the thought. Naruto had been like a grandson to him. The young boy had always wanted to protect the village, to prove his worth. Now, it seemed as though that very desire had been corrupted by this unimaginable power. But Hiruzen was no fool. He knew there was always hope. Even if Naruto had become something beyond a simple ninja, he had a heart that had once burned with the desire to protect the people of Konaha. "Perhaps there is still a chance," the Hokage said, his voice heavy with determination. But what could he do? He was no longer dealing with a young boy. He was facing a being who could reshape the world with a thought. Meanwhile, Naruto's gaze fixed on the Hokage's tower, his smile widening as he sensed the man's presence. He could feel the old man's fear. But more than that, he felt his resolve. Hiruzen would not give up on him so easily. "Then let's see what you can do, old man," Naruto whispered, stepping forward with purpose. With a single thought, he vanished from the village square, reappearing at the Hokage's office in the blink of an eye. The air crackled with his energy as he materialized before the window. Looking down on the village below, Hiruzen's eyes locked with his. And for the first time, the Hokage felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't the Naruto he had raised. This was something far more dangerous. Naruto tilted his head slightly, his grin widening. "What will you do, Hokage? Will you try to stop me? Or will you bow?" The Hokage didn't respond immediately. He simply stood there, his old, wise eyes locked onto the boy who had once been a symbol of hope, but now was a living nightmare. "I'll never bow to anyone, Naruto," Hiruzen said, his voice firm. Naruto's smile faltered for a brief moment, as if considering the old man's words. Then, without warning, he raised his hand, and the world seemed to tremble once again. Time itself felt as though it had slowed to a crawl. "Then you will be erased," Naruto declared. Hiruzen Sarutobi stood firm, despite the overwhelming pressure in the room. The very air seemed to bend under the weight of Naruto's power. In every instinct he had as a seasoned Hokage screamed for him to flee or prepare for a fight that could tear the village asunder. But he didn't move. His gaze never wavered from Naruto's crimson eyes that now burned with the authority of a god. Naruto's outstretched hand glowed with a dark crimson light, the energy crackling as it twisted the very fabric of reality itself. Time seemed to stretch, as if the moment were being drawn into an endless abyss. Hiruzen's breath caught in his throat. He could feel the crushing presence of Naruto's power, as though the very laws of nature were being rewritten around them. "Is this really you, Naruto?" Hiruzen's voice trembled slightly, but there was no fear in it, only the sorrow of a man who had failed to protect the boy he had cared for. Naruto's lips curled into a twisted grin, the godlike presence emanating from him even more intense. "I'm not the boy you knew anymore. I'm something far greater. A king, Hiruzen. A king of a world that bends to my will." The Hokage's mind raced. He knew he was no match for this version of Naruto. The village, the entire world, could be crushed beneath the weight of the boy's power. But still, he had to try. He had to reach the part of Naruto that was still the boy he had raised. The child who had wanted nothing more than to protect others. "You were never meant for this, Naruto," Hiruzen said softly. "This power, it's not who you are. You've always been a hero. Someone who defends those who can't defend themselves." Naruto's eyes flickered for the briefest of moments. A flash of something, doubt, regret? It was impossible to tell. But it vanished just as quickly as it had appeared. "My old self is gone, Hokage. You should know that by now." Naruto's voice was cold, devoid of the warmth it once held. "I've ascended to a new form. One that will reshape everything." With a wave of his hand, the very air around them cracked like glass. The world itself seemed to bend, the space within the room warping and distorting, as though it could no longer hold the pressure of the energy swirling around Naruto. "Stop this, Naruto!" Hiruzen shouted, stepping forward, his voice shaking with a rare urgency. He could feel it, deep in his gut. The desire to stop the boy who had once been his hope. "This is madness. You are still Naruto, deep inside. This power doesn't define you." Naruto's laughter echoed, cold and hollow. It reverberated off the walls of the Hokage's office like the sound of thunder, filling the entire village. His grin grew wider, more manic. "Madness? No, this is freedom, Hokage. This is true power," he said. "No more limitations. No more bonds. I will erase everything that dares oppose me." The energy around Naruto intensified, and with a simple flick of his wrist, a destructive pulse rippled outward. The building around them groaned in protest as the air itself tore open, creating a rift that stretched across the sky. The shockwave sent Hiruzen flying backward, crashing against the wall. The force of the blast shattered the windows, sending debris flying through the air. For a moment, everything went still. As Hiruzen struggled to rise to his feet, the world around him seemed to spin. He looked up to see Naruto standing at the center of the room, untouched by the destruction he had wrought, his eyes glowing with an unfathomable power. "I gave you a chance, Naruto," Hiruzen said, his voice strained. "But if this is the path you've chosen, then I have no choice." Naruto's expression softened for just a moment, as if considering the old man's words. But it didn't last. The moment vanished, replaced once again by the unrelenting aura of power that surrounded him. "You're too weak to stop me, Hokage," Naruto declared. "But don't worry. I won't kill you. Not yet. You'll live long enough to see this world kneel before me." The ground trembled beneath their feet as Naruto's power surged. Reality itself seemed to buckle under the weight of his will, bending and folding as if it were paper in his hands. The force of his chakra was now so intense that the entire Hokage building began to crack and crumble, the walls shaking as if they might collapse at any moment. But Hiruzen wasn't going to give up. He had to protect Konaha, even if it meant confronting Naruto, his surrogate grandson. He reached into his sleeve, pulling out a scroll that contained the forbidden jutsu he had hoped never to use. The Reaper Death Seal. "This will end it," Hiruzen muttered to himself. Though he knew the price of using such a technique would be his own life. He didn't care. If there was any hope of saving Naruto, it was this. With his last bit of strength, the Hokage began to form the hand signs. The room around him distorted further, as if the space itself was responding to his actions. But before he could complete the jutsu, Naruto's gaze locked onto him. "Don't even think about it," Naruto said, his voice dripping with malice. In an instant, a powerful gust of wind surged from his body, pushing Hiruzen to his knees. The scroll slipped from his hands, fluttering to the ground uselessly. Naruto raised his hand again, the energy around him spiraling into a vortex of power. This is the end of your world, old man. Hirizen's eyes filled with regret. Naruto. Please. Don't let the power consume you. The younger man's expression faltered for a brief moment, just long enough for Hirizen to see the faintest glimmer of the boy he had known. But it was fleeting, gone in an instant, swallowed up by the overwhelming power that had taken over. Goodbye, Hokage, Naruto said, his voice flat and cold. He raised his hand high, and the energy around them began to warp, ready to erase the entire building from existence. But before he could strike, the air shimmered. There was a disturbance. Another presence. A feeling of raw power. Unlike anything Naruto had sensed before. It wasn't from Konaha. It wasn't from the village's defenders. It was something otherworldly. Naruto's eyes narrowed. The air around him rippled again, and the ground beneath him quaked as a figure appeared before him, stepping out from a dimensional rift. The figure was tall, adorned in regal robes, their face hidden by a shadowed hood. "You're too weak to stop him," the figure said, their voice deep and resonant. Naruto's eyes flared as he recognized the presence, the sheer intensity of it. It was power beyond even what he had already become. This was a being who stood on a level above him, a power that threatened to eclipse his own. "Who are you?" Naruto demanded, his voice laced with both intrigue and irritation. The power of this figure, though it was new to him, felt all too familiar. He could sense it, a presence that could challenge him, rewrite existence, just as he could. The figure slowly raised their head, revealing an unfamiliar face, one that felt like a part of him. A strange sense of recognition washed over Naruto. "I am the one who will show you your true path," the figure said with an eerie calm. "I am the one who will make you a king among kings." Anos Voldigoad. Naruto's gaze sharpened as the figure before him revealed their true identity. Anos Voldigoad. The name struck Naruto like a thunderbolt. He had never heard of this being before, yet a strange feeling stirred deep within him. It wasn't fear, not exactly, but something akin to awe. The very aura of this individual was otherworldly, beyond godlike. Anos Voldigoad was a being whose presence seemed to twist the fabric of reality itself. The air thickened as Naruto's eyes narrowed, studying the newcomer. The power radiating from Anos was palpable, something Naruto instinctively recognized as a challenge, a test of the limits of his own existence. Anos Voldigoad. Naruto's voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. "I've never heard of you. But your power, it feels like mine." "No. Beyond mine." Anos took a single step forward, his eyes glowing with a deep, ancient knowledge. The ground trembled beneath him, though he barely moved. He exuded an overwhelming force that seemed to bend time and space around him. His voice resonated in Naruto's mind, deep and powerful. "You are wrong, Naruto Uzumaki. You are not like me. Not yet," Anos said, his tone calm but heavy with authority. "You are a child, playing with power you do not fully understand. I see it in you. The remnants of your past life. The remnants of someone who fought to be seen, to be acknowledged. But you are blind to the truth of what you've become." Naruto's fists clenched at his sides, his chakra flaring as his anger sparked. "You don't know anything about me. I fought my entire life to get here. You think I'm just some child? I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I'm a god now. I have the power to rewrite reality itself." Anos's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. He could sense the raw power surging through Naruto, an immense force. Yes, but it was still untamed, unrefined. Naruto may have been a king in his own right, but he was still a fledgling compared to the likes of Anos. "You misunderstand, Naruto," Anos said, his voice gentle, as though speaking to a child. "You have power. That much is true. But what you lack is understanding. What you lack is control. Power alone is not enough to make one a true ruler. You speak of rewriting reality, but you can't even comprehend the magnitude of what that truly means. You are a fledgling god at best, and there are forces in this universe far beyond your reach." Naruto's expression darkened, his eyes flashing with fury. The audacity of this being, standing before him, so casually belittling him. He had spent years, decades, fighting for this strength. And now, someone he had never even heard of came and told him he was nothing but a child? A fake god? No one tells me I'm a fake, Naruto snarled. I'll show you what I'm capable of. He raised his hand, a massive surge of energy pouring from him like a tidal wave. The sky above them cracked with the force of his power, and the ground began to buckle under the strain of the chakra roaring through his body. Time itself seemed to tremble as Naruto's energy became a maelstrom, spiraling out of control. Enos's eyes glowed with ancient knowledge as he watched Naruto unleash his full power. But instead of retreating or bracing for the inevitable destruction, Enos simply raised a hand, his fingers curling slightly. The air around them rippled as the energy Naruto summoned simply stopped. Mid-air, frozen. The world around them fell into a silence so complete. It felt unnatural. Even the destruction that had been rampant in the Hokage's office stopped. The energy Naruto had released hung in the air, suspended by a single wave of Enos's hand. Naruto's eyes widened in shock, unable to comprehend what had just happened. What the hell did you do? Enos's expression remained unshaken. I did nothing. You did everything. You're simply too reckless. You let your power run wild without thought, without purpose. This is why you cannot rule. With a swift gesture, Enos released his hold on the suspended energy. And the destruction that Naruto had caused returned in full force. But it wasn't like before. This time, the destruction was purposeful, controlled, and infinitely more devastating. The walls of the Hokage's office buckled, collapsing as debris exploded outward. Yet, through all of it, Enos remained perfectly calm, as if untouched by the chaos around him. Naruto staggered back, his breath coming in sharp gasps. His mind raced. He could feel his chakra pulsing like a roaring river within him. But now it was different. It felt alien, like it no longer belonged to him. The Nine Tails chakra felt like a distant echo, no longer able to surge alongside him in the way it once did. You see now? Enos's voice was soft, but the weight of it crushed down on Naruto. Power without control is chaos. You wield unimaginable force, but you have no understanding of its limits or its purpose. You can destroy, but you cannot build. You cannot create. You can't even keep control of your own mind, let alone the world around you. Naruto's mind reeled. He had always fought for control, for recognition, for his village. But this was something else entirely. Enos was right. All the power he had gathered, all the forces he had bent to his will, felt meaningless in the face of this being. He had ascended to a level beyond the mortal. But this was something greater. He had thought he was invincible. But standing before Enos, he realized how small he truly was in the grand scheme of things. What do you want from me? Naruto's voice was shaky now, the arrogance he once carried fading in the face of Enos's overwhelming might. Why are you here? Why are you showing me all of this? Enos tilted his head slightly, considering the question. I'm not here to destroy you, Naruto Uzumaki. I'm here to offer you a choice. A choice to become more. To transcend your current state and evolve into something even greater than you've imagined. You think you can rewrite reality, but in your current state, you can barely understand the rules. I am offering you the key to that understanding, the power to truly reshape the world at your will. If you choose to accept it, that is. Naruto felt the weight of Enos's words settle deep within him. His mind, though still clouded by the vast power he had obtained, began to clear. There was a part of him, a part that had always been hungry for more, always seeking strength, always wanting to protect others, that felt the pull of Enos's offer. But why me? Naruto asked, his voice quieter now. Why choose me over anyone else? Why not just take control yourself? Enos's smile was brief, but it carried the weight of infinite experience. Because, Naruto, you are unique. You have the potential to surpass even me. If you truly understand what it means to wield this power, I see in you something others do not, something worth cultivating, something that could reshape the fabric of reality itself. But first, you must learn. And I will teach you. Naruto stood in stunned silence, the enormity of Enos's words washing over him. The power he had thought was limitless now seemed trivial in comparison to what Anos was offering. This wasn't just about conquering the world or rewriting reality. It was about transcending it. "You want me to learn from you?" Naruto asked, disbelief creeping into his voice. "I don't need a teacher. I've already reached the peak." "But," Anos's eyes gleamed with a knowing look, "you've reached the limits of your potential in your current form. To truly become what you aspired to be, a god of gods, you must understand what it means to be truly immortal. To understand power not as a force of destruction, but as the foundation of all creation." Naruto's mind swirled with the possibilities. A god of gods. The words reverberated in his chest. And he felt an unfamiliar fire stirring within him. "What do I have to do?" Naruto asked, his voice steady now, resolve hardening in his heart. Anos's smile widened. "Then come with me, Naruto Uzumaki. Let us see if you can handle the true extent of your potential." And just like that, the world around them began to shift, bending once again under the weight of their power. The world around them seemed to dissolve into a mist, fading away as though it had never existed. Naruto blinked, feeling the last traces of Konaha's familiar landscape vanish. One moment, he had been standing in the Hokage's office, staring down the very man who had raised him. The next, everything was a blur of swirling energy and shifting space. He felt it, the overwhelming sensation of being pulled, stretched, and twisted through dimensions. The world itself seemed to warp around him as though the laws of reality no longer applied. And yet, he didn't feel fear. There was only a strange, insatiable curiosity. A hunger to see what lay beyond. To grasp the true meaning of power. To understand what Anos Voldigoad had promised. Naruto's eyes adjusted to the shifting world around him. The mist parted, revealing an expansive landscape. Vast and endless. It was like nothing he had ever seen before. Mountains stretched high into the sky, their peaks lost in the clouds. The earth seemed to pulse with energy. Each blade of grass, every stone, vibrating with power. In the distance, structures, ancient, towering spires, pierced the sky, bathed in a soft, ethereal glow. This wasn't just another world. It was something entirely beyond Naruto's comprehension. He looked around, searching for any sign of Anos. But the being had vanished, leaving Naruto alone in the vast expanse. He could feel his own power. But it was different now. It wasn't the chaotic, uncontrolled force he had unleashed in Konaha. It was calmer, more refined. Like the energy of the very universe itself. He had barely begun to grasp the scope of it. And yet, he felt a deep connection to it. As if this power was meant for him. But then, a voice echoed through the air, deep and resonant, vibrating through Naruto's very being. "Welcome to the realm of the eternal," Anos's voice said. Though the figure itself was nowhere to be seen. "This is the domain where true power is understood. Where gods are made. It is here that you will learn to wield the force that created everything." Naruto's heart raced as he stood tall, fists clenched. He had fought for everything, endured so much. And now, standing in a place so far removed from everything he had ever known, he felt the weight of it all. This was more than just a training ground. It was a proving ground. If he could master this, if he could become what Anos wanted him to be, there would be no limit to what he could do. The world, the very universe, could be his to command. But before he could fully process this, Anos materialized before him in a flash of light, standing tall and imposing. His eyes glowed with an otherworldly energy, and his mere presence seemed to warp the fabric of the air around him. "Now, Naruto Uzumaki," Anos began, his voice as calm as ever. "You are here not just to learn power, but to learn control. Power without control is chaos. It is reckless. You understand this, don't you?" Naruto gritted his teeth, looking up at the god before him. "Yeah, I get it. But what are you gonna teach me? I've already mastered chakra, mastered my own strength. What more is there?" Anos's lips curled into a faint smile. "You're mistaken if you believe you have mastered all that is within you. You have only scratched the surface of true potential. Naruto. Power isn't just about how much you can unleash, it's about understanding the very foundation of reality. The rules that govern existence itself. It's about being able to bend the world to your will and reshape it at a whim. Naruto's brow furrowed. Reshape the world. At a whim. Enos nodded. Reality itself is a construct. It is a series of rules that can be rewritten, modified, or destroyed. I have seen entire worlds fall. And I have seen them rise again. You are about to learn how to manipulate the very fabric of existence. You will learn to rewrite the laws that bind all things. Naruto's mind raced. The prospect of mastering such power, of controlling everything down to the very laws of the universe, was intoxicating. But even as he felt the allure of it, a small part of him hesitated. He remembered his promises to his friends, to the village. He had always fought to protect. But now, he stood on the cusp of becoming something greater, something more dangerous. But, Naruto said, a note of caution creeping into his voice. What about my friends? My village? What happens if I change everything? Will they even be the same? Enos's gaze softened for the briefest moment, and Naruto could see a flicker of something akin to understanding in the god's eyes. You still think in terms of what you've known. Your village, your bonds, they are important. Yes. But what you're about to learn will transcend these bonds. You will learn to reshape existence itself. If you wish to protect them, you must first understand how to control the forces that govern all things. Naruto's chest tightened. The weight of Enos's words sank in. He had always wanted to protect those he loved. But now, he was about to learn how to wield the power of a god. Could he control it? Could he resist the temptation to use it for his own desires? To bend reality to his will? Enos raised a hand. And in an instant, the vast landscape around them began to shift. The towering spires in the distance began to fold, collapsing into themselves like paper being crumpled. The sky itself darkened, twisting and spiraling into a vortex of shifting colors. The ground beneath Naruto's feet trembled, cracks forming in the earth as though the very fabric of reality was warping. This is the beginning, Naruto. You will not learn to control power by simply unleashing it. You will learn to understand it. You will learn to shape it. You will learn to master the forces of existence itself. Naruto's eyes widened as the world around him seemed to bend and reshape, every aspect of it controlled by Enos's will. He felt a surge of power inside himself, the very energy that coursed through the universe itself. Yet he couldn't help but feel small, insignificant in the face of such mastery. How was he supposed to master something so vast, so incomprehensible? Enos sensed Naruto's hesitation and smiled slightly. You doubt yourself. But that is natural. It is the first step toward understanding. Power is not a gift. It is a burden, a responsibility. And only those who understand it can wield it without being consumed by it. Naruto clenched his fists, the weight of Enos's words pressing down on him. His mind flashed to the faces of his friends, his village, his family. He had always fought for them, fought to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Could he truly learn to control this power without losing himself? Without becoming something worse than the monster he had once been in their eyes? I'll learn, Naruto said, his voice firm with resolve. I don't care how hard it is. I'll master this power. For myself. For everyone. Enos's smile widened slightly. That is the spirit. But remember, Naruto Uzumaki, mastery comes with sacrifice. If you wish to understand reality, you must be willing to give up what you hold most dear. Naruto stood tall, the resolve in his eyes shining brighter than ever. He had faced countless battles, defeated impossible odds, and fought for what he believed in. Now, he was being offered the chance to become something beyond a mere mortal, beyond even a god. But the question lingered. Would he be able to control this power? Would he be able to hold on to who he was? Even as he rose to heights unimaginable? He was determined to find out. Naruto's body hummed with energy as he stood at the precipice of this new reality. Enos had already begun to guide him through the foundational teachings. But every lesson brought more questions, more uncertainty. Power was one thing, but the intricacies of controlling it on such a scale were another entirely. It was as though he had entered a vast ocean of knowledge, but he was still only dipping his toes in the surface, trying to understand its depths. The air around them shimmered as Enos spoke again, his voice carrying a weight that seemed to echo across dimensions. Your chakra, Naruto, is a manifestation of your will. It is raw, untamed. But what you are about to learn is how to refine it, to shape it. Power is not just about will. It is about understanding the balance, the equilibrium that governs all things. Reality is not a thing to be controlled by brute force alone. It must be understood. Its flow, its structure, its essence. Naruto furrowed his brow. His instincts were telling him to charge forward, to smash through the barriers of understanding the way he had with his fists and chakra before. But he had already learned that such brute force wouldn't work here. Balance. Equilibrium? Naruto repeated, his voice thoughtful. So I can't just push my way through everything. Huh? Anos glanced at him. A flicker of approval in his eyes. You're learning quickly. Balance is the key. Everything in existence has its opposite, its counterpart. Creation and destruction, light and dark, order and chaos. These forces are not enemies. They are part of a greater whole. You must understand this harmony if you are to truly master power. Naruto nodded slowly, his mind racing with the implications of what Anos had said. He had always seen himself as a protector, someone who fought to create and preserve. But in order to reshape the world, to bend it to his will, he would need to understand both creation and destruction, not just as concepts, but as forces he could wield with precision. The thought of balancing such raw, primal energies seemed daunting. But Naruto was no stranger to overcoming the impossible. So how do I start? He asked, eager to move forward. His whole life had been about pushing the limits, testing himself against challenges. Now, the challenge was different. The stakes were higher. Anos extended his hand, and the world around them shifted once more. This time, there was no twisting of the landscape. Instead, everything seemed to freeze. Time itself appeared to slow, then stop entirely. The very air around them became still, as though the universe itself had held its breath. I will show you the first step, Anos said, his voice now carrying the weight of eternity. You will understand time, for time is the root of reality. It is the thread that binds all things. With mastery over time, you will begin to comprehend the true essence of creation and destruction. Naruto felt a strange tingling sensation crawling up his spine as the air grew colder. He had never been this still in his life. His mind raced, but his body remained completely frozen in place. His breath slowed, and he could hear the beating of his heart, each pulse ringing in his ears like a distant drum. Anos moved with unnatural grace, walking slowly around Naruto. Time is a force that bends and warps all things. When you understand it, you will learn that it is not something that controls you. It is something you can control. With that control, you can rewrite reality itself. Change the past, alter the present, predict the future. The possibilities are limitless. Naruto's thoughts whirled. The ability to control time. It sounded like the kind of power he had only dreamed of, something that could fix everything he had ever felt powerless over. He thought of all the moments in his life when he had felt weak, those times when he was treated like an outcast, when he failed to save those he cared about. He could change it all. He could undo his regrets. But even as the thought passed through his mind, he felt a shiver run down his spine. Anos was right. Time wasn't something to be tampered with lightly. If reality could be rewritten, how would he even know where to stop? The temptation to abuse such power, it was dangerous. He'd already seen what happened when he let his power go unchecked. Would he become like the very monsters he had fought against? Naruto's voice broke the silence. But how do I control it? How do I even begin to understand it? I've never even tried to control time before. Anos's gaze softened for the first time, a knowing look passing across his features. It begins with perception. Naruto. You must feel time. Close your eyes. Naruto did as instructed, though he could still feel Anos's presence looming like an immovable mountain. The world around him remained motionless, frozen in place. You must learn to perceive time not as a linear path, but as a fluid, malleable force. Time is not a river that flows in one direction. It is an ocean, with currents running in every direction. You must learn to navigate it, to swim against its currents. Naruto took a deep breath. It was hard to wrap his mind around this. He had spent his life thinking of time as something that simply moved forward, a relentless march toward the future. But here, in this strange, frozen moment, time felt different. The way Anos described it, Time was not a relentless force, but something that could be bent, shaped. It made sense, after all. He had experienced the feeling of time slowing down in battle when using his heightened senses. But what Anos was talking about was on an entirely different scale. This was beyond instinct. This was mastery. Naruto's mind began to focus, his senses sharpening. He could feel it now, deep within him. The pulse of time. Faint and distant, but unmistakable. It was as though the entire universe was holding its breath, waiting for him to move, to do something. Anything. I can feel it, Naruto whispered, his voice filled with awe. I can feel the flow of time, it's everywhere. Anos nodded, his gaze steady. Good. You're beginning to understand. Now, you must learn to command it. Naruto took another breath, steadying himself. He had always been a quick learner. But this was a different kind of challenge. He wasn't just learning a new jutsu or technique, he was learning to reshape the very foundation of existence. To control time itself. For the first time since arriving in this strange place, Naruto felt a surge of confidence. His connection to time, to reality itself, grew stronger. He could feel the world around him, its heartbeat, its rhythm. It was no longer frozen in place, but shifting, fluid, like a river he could navigate. Time was no longer a force he was subject to. It was something he could control. Now, Anos's voice cut through the stillness. I want you to do something simple. Reverse the flow of time in this space. Naruto's heart raced. Reverse time? That was no simple task. But then, he remembered Anos's words. Time wasn't a linear thing. It could be reversed, altered. All he had to do was understand the flow and bend it to his will. Focusing, Naruto reached deep within, feeling the flow of time like a current beneath his feet. He closed his eyes and, with a steady breath, he willed the world around him to change. Slowly, the frozen landscape began to shift. Just a little at first. The air began to vibrate, and time started to move in reverse. The cracks in the earth slowly began to close. The collapsing buildings straightened, and the destruction Naruto had caused earlier began to rewind. A pulse of energy surged through him, and Naruto's eyes shot open. He saw the world revert, the damage undoing itself, as if the very fabric of reality was being rewoven. The power felt exhilarating, like he was controlling the flow of the universe itself. But as the world reversed, Naruto suddenly felt a wave of dizziness. Time itself was fighting him, pushing back against his will. He faltered, struggling to maintain his grip on the flow. The world began to warp again. But this time, it didn't feel like control. It felt like chaos. Reality itself seemed to twist, threatening to snap back. Anos's voice broke through the whirlwind of thoughts in Naruto's mind. You are still learning, Naruto. Power like this is not to be wielded recklessly. It takes patience, precision, and above all, understanding. Naruto's breath came in sharp gasps. He could feel his energy draining, the strain of trying to manipulate time weighing on him. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. This power, this understanding of reality, was his to master. And no matter how difficult it was, no matter how much control he had to gain, he would rise to meet it. He had already come this far, and there was no going back now. Naruto stood still, his mind still reeling from the intense exertion of trying to manipulate time. His chest rose and fell with each breath, his body tired but his spirit burning with determination. He could feel the power within him, an untapped well of energy that, once fully harnessed, could reshape the world itself. But this newfound ability wasn't something that could be wielded recklessly. He had felt the chaotic backlash when he tried to bend time. It was a reminder of just how fragile reality could be when tampered with. Anos stood across from him, his expression unreadable. There was a faint trace of approval in his eyes, but also a warning. You're far from mastering this ability, Naruto, Anos said, his voice calm and measured. But you have made progress. You felt the flow of time. That is the first step. However, the next step is understanding why time moves in the way it does. Naruto nodded, trying to steady himself. So it's not just about reversing things or stopping time. I need to understand the forces that make time. Well, time. Precisely. Anos said. Time, in essence, is the manifestation of existence itself. It flows because things exist, because there is change. Growth, decay. It is not a simple stream to be traversed. It is a living, breathing thing, bound by the laws of reality. When you alter time, you are not simply rewinding the clock. You are meddling with the very essence of what makes the universe. It is not something that can be done on a whim. You must learn to perceive the underlying laws. Naruto's mind was starting to open to the complexity of it all. So, if I understand this right, messing with time is like messing with the core of existence. It's like pulling on a thread and unraveling everything? Anos smiled slightly, though the expression was more one of patience than amusement. Yes. But that thread is not something you can simply pull at. If you do, you may find that it unravels you instead. Time is a balance. And to master it, you must understand its foundation. Naruto was quiet for a moment, his mind racing. There was so much to process, and yet he knew he had to take it one step at a time. Anos was right. Power alone wouldn't be enough. To truly reshape the world, to create the future he wanted, he had to understand the intricacies of reality itself. So, what do I do now? Naruto asked, his voice filled with determination. Anos tilted his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Now, you learn patience. Mastering time requires a steady hand. But it also requires you to recognize that not all moments are meant to be changed. Sometimes, it is not about altering time, but understanding it, letting it pass as it is meant to. The trick is not to control everything, but to control yourself. Naruto stared at Anos, absorbing his words. He had always been quick to act, quick to charge forward. But this was different. This power, this knowledge, it demanded more than just action. It demanded wisdom. Naruto had always been impulsive, but if he wanted to truly master this power, he had to learn to think before he acted. He had to feel the flow of time, not just force it to his will. All right, Naruto said, a grin forming on his face as he wiped the sweat from his brow. I'm ready to learn. Show me what comes next. Anos's eyes glimmered with a faint, approving light. He extended his hand, and with a simple gesture, the world around them shifted once more. This time, there was no sense of time freezing. Instead, the landscape began to ripple, as though reality itself was bending and warping. Anos had shifted their surroundings to an entirely new dimension. A barren wasteland, cracked earth stretching as far as the eye could see. There was no sky, no stars, just an expanse of gray that seemed to stretch on forever. This is a place outside of time, Naruto, Anos explained. A place where time does not exist. Here, you will not be able to alter reality, because there is no reality to alter. You will learn what it means to exist without time, to experience the weight of eternity. Naruto felt a shiver run down his spine. The emptiness of this place was overwhelming. It was like standing on the edge of everything, where nothing could move and everything was frozen in a state of eternal stasis. He had never felt anything like it before. Time was an anchor, a force that held everything in place. But here, there was no anchor. It was as if the very concept of time had ceased to be. Why bring me here? Naruto asked, his voice strained. If there's no time, then how am I supposed to learn anything? Anos's gaze was unblinking as he stared into the vast emptiness. Because, Naruto, you must learn to exist without time. It is only when you can understand what it is like to have no past, no future, that you will begin to comprehend the importance of the present. Time is not a constant, but a force that binds the past and future to the now. It is your perception of the present that matters most. When you realize that, you will be able to control time itself. Naruto took a deep breath, trying to settle his nerves. The air was still, the silence deafening. He had always been someone driven by the future, his goals, his dreams, his battles. But here, in this timeless void, there was nothing to reach for. There was only the present. Closing his eyes, Naruto focused inward. The world was empty, yet he could feel the energy of existence around him. It was subtle, but it was there. The feeling of being alive, of breathing, of thinking. These were the things that anchored him to the world. Even in the absence of time, he was still him. All right, he whispered. I get it. He didn't need to rush forward. He didn't need to fix everything. What mattered was understanding the present, appreciating the now. The past and future were important, but only because they shaped the moments that were happening right in front of him. Time, he realized, was not something that could be rushed or ignored. It was something that had to be understood, felt, and experienced. Only then could it be controlled. Anos's voice broke through his thoughts. Well done. You're beginning to understand. Now, let us return. With another gesture, Anos returned them to their previous surroundings. The world, once again, was full of life, time flowing in its usual pattern. Naruto blinked, taking in the familiar sights, feeling the rhythm of time once more. Remember this lesson, Naruto, Anos said, his tone serious. Time is not something to be fought against. It is something to be understood. Only when you can do that will you truly be able to master it. Naruto nodded, a new resolve in his heart. He had taken the first steps toward mastering his newfound powers. And though there was still much to learn, he knew this was just the beginning. The power of time, of existence itself, was in his grasp. And with it, there was nothing he couldn't do. But as he looked to the future, Naruto knew one thing for certain. His journey had only just begun. The world around Naruto seemed to hum with possibilities as Anos stood in front of him, watching his every move. Naruto could feel the weight of the lessons he had just absorbed. And yet there was still a vast ocean of knowledge to cross. His understanding of time had expanded. But it was clear that this was only the beginning of his journey into the deeper layers of reality. As the world around them began to take shape again, the landscape changing from the barren wasteland back to a lush, vibrant field, Naruto's mind was buzzing with thoughts. The realization that time was not just a linear path. It was a force he could shape, bend, and even understand at a fundamental level, had left him both awestruck and overwhelmed. So, what's next? Naruto asked, his voice steady, but the spark of curiosity in his eyes undeniable. I've learned to understand time better, but that's just one piece. Right? There's more to it, isn't there? Anos's lips curled slightly upward, a rare expression of approval. You're correct, Naruto. Time is merely the beginning. The true path to power lies in understanding the structure of reality itself. Time is only one of the fundamental forces that governs the universe. There are many others. Space, matter, energy, and even concepts like fate and entropy. Each of these can be manipulated in its own way. But before we move forward, you must first learn the most important lesson of all. Naruto tilted his head, feeling a twinge of unease. What's that? Anos's eyes gleamed with a profound intensity. The lesson of existence. Existence? Naruto echoed, his brow furrowing. What do you mean? Anos stepped closer, his aura radiating power as he placed a hand gently on Naruto's shoulder. The touch was surprisingly gentle, considering Anos's immense power. Every living thing in this universe exists because it has a purpose. The concept of existence is not as simple as, I am here. To exist is to occupy a space, to have a purpose within that space, to interact with the forces that govern the world around you. Understanding this concept, Naruto, is crucial to gaining true power. Naruto's mind raced. He had always felt out of place in the world, always fighting to prove his existence. But Anos was suggesting something deeper, something more fundamental. It wasn't just about fighting to belong. It was about understanding why he was here, what his place in this universe was. So, it's not enough to just live. I have to understand why I live? Why I exist? Naruto asked, his voice hesitant, but the weight of the question settling over him. Anos nodded. Precisely. And this is where the true power of immortality lies. Understanding why you exist allows you to transcend the limitations of time and space. You must learn to reshape your very existence, to define it according to your will. The stronger your understanding of your own existence, the more you will be able to influence the universe around you. Naruto stood there, taking it all in. The words were deep, far more complex than anything he had been taught before. The idea of existence, of shaping it, seemed almost impossible. But in the pit of his stomach, Naruto felt a spark of something familiar, the same fire that had always driven him. He wasn't sure how or why, but he knew that if anyone could learn this, It was him. If there was one thing Naruto had always done, it was fight to define his place in the world. "I'm ready," Naruto said, his voice filled with determination. "Show me how to understand why I exist." Anos's smile deepened, a glimmer of pride in his gaze. "Very well. The first step is to break the barriers of perception. You're too focused on what is around you, Naruto. You must learn to go deeper, to look within." Without another word, Anos raised his hand, and Naruto felt the space around them warp once again. This time, the surroundings melted away, and Naruto found himself alone in an expanse of nothingness. It was as though he had been transported to the core of his own consciousness. The vast emptiness stretched infinitely, with no ground beneath his feet, no sky above him. There was only the feeling of his own presence in the vast void. "Where am I?" Naruto asked, his voice shaking slightly. "You are inside your own mind." Anos's voice echoed around him, though he couldn't see where it was coming from. "This is the space where your true self resides. All of your experiences, all of your emotions, all of your thoughts, they are bound here, within you. This is where you must begin to understand your existence." Naruto blinked, taking in the surreal landscape. It was unsettling at first. This place devoid of everything except his own being. But he could feel something stirring deep inside him. He was aware of himself. But this place, this space, felt different. It was as though he could reach inside himself and pull at something far deeper than his conscious thoughts. "So, how do I start?" he asked. "You start by letting go," Anos said. "You must free yourself from the limitations of your own perception. You've always seen yourself as an outcast, as someone who had to prove his worth to the world. But that is only one layer of your existence. It is time to peel back those layers and understand the true core of who you are." Naruto closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He had spent his entire life fighting to prove himself, to show others that he was worth something. But in this empty place, in the silence of his own mind, he realized that proving himself to others was not the point. The true challenge was understanding his own worth, his own existence, without the need for external validation. A deep sense of peace began to settle over him as he allowed himself to let go of his past fears and insecurities. The weight of his childhood, the loneliness, the struggle. He allowed all of it to fade away. In this place, Naruto didn't need to be the hero. He didn't need to be the loud, brash kid who always pushed forward. Here, he could simply be. For the first time, Naruto felt truly connected to himself. "You're beginning to understand," Anos's voice echoed again, softer this time. "Your existence is not defined by what others think of you, nor by the struggles you face. It is defined by the simple truth that you are. You are not a product of your past. You are not a consequence of the world around you. You are an entity in your own right, with the power to shape your own existence." Naruto's mind raced as the pieces began to fall into place. He was more than just a ninja. More than just a son of the fourth Hokage. More than the boy who had been rejected by the village. He was a being of immense potential, with the ability to shape not just his own life, but the world around him. The thought was overwhelming, but exhilarating. He could see it now. He wasn't bound by the limitations of his past. He didn't have to keep fighting to earn a place in the world. He already had one. The power to define his existence was his to command. Opening his eyes, Naruto saw the void before him shift, its infinite expanse folding inward as a brilliant light began to shine from within him. The light felt warm, comforting, and all-encompassing, and for the first time in his life, Naruto felt at peace with who he was. "I understand," Naruto said softly, his voice filled with a quiet certainty. "I am who I choose to be. My existence is my own to define." Anos's eyes glinted with approval. "Exactly. Now that you understand your existence, you can begin to shape the world around you. The power to control reality lies within you. But it begins with this core understanding. Never forget it, Naruto. This is the foundation of your immortality. And from this foundation, you will build the future." Naruto felt a surge of confidence, of power. Unlike anything he had experienced before. He was no longer the confused, lonely boy he had once been. He was something greater. Something more. And with this new understanding, he knew he was ready for whatever the future held. The journey was far from over. But Naruto was no longer afraid. Naruto's newfound sense of purpose surged through him like a torrent of energy. His connection to time and existence felt as though the very fabric of reality was within his grasp. The power was intoxicating. But beneath the exhilaration was a quiet focus, a knowledge that the true challenge had only just begun. As the light from within him began to subside, the emptiness around him shifted once again. This time, the vast expanse of his inner world faded away, and he found himself standing before Anos. The powerful figure was still, his gaze steady, watching Naruto with an intensity that seemed to pierce right through him. Anos spoke, his voice calm but laden with meaning. You have now begun to comprehend what many never will in their lifetimes. But comprehension alone is not enough. You must now learn to act upon it. The true power of existence is not in mere understanding, but in mastery. And mastery requires you to move beyond theory and put what you know into practice. Naruto clenched his fists, the weight of Anos's words settling in. He had understood time. He had understood existence. But now, he was expected to act, to use his newfound power. I'm ready, Naruto said with firm conviction, his tone brimming with confidence. His eyes locked with Anos's, challenging the elder being to push him further. Anos gave a small nod. Very well. Let us see if you are truly ready. Without another word, Anos raised his hand, and in an instant, the world around them morphed once again. The once serene field disappeared, replaced by an entirely new landscape, a sprawling battlefield, scarred by the remnants of a long-forgotten war. The sky was darkened with swirling clouds, and the air felt thick with tension. Naruto's senses were on high alert. The air hummed with energy. The ground beneath him vibrated, and distant sounds of clashing forces echoed through the battlefield. It was an illusion, of course, but the sense of danger and chaos felt real. Do you understand, Naruto? Anos's voice cut through the disorienting atmosphere. In this world, there are those who use time and existence for destruction. They manipulate these forces not to understand, but to dominate. Their understanding of reality is shallow, twisted. They do not seek harmony, but power. Naruto's gaze swept the horizon. His instincts were sharp, and the presence of hostile forces, though intangible, sent a warning to his very soul. I get it, he said, steeling himself. They abuse their power, take what they want without understanding the consequences. Anos's eyes gleamed. Correct. Now, you must learn to reshape that chaos. You are not yet powerful enough to fight these forces directly. But you do not need to. You are a master of time and existence. Change the battlefield. Change the rules. Let them see the cost of manipulating what they do not understand. Naruto's pulse quickened as he processed Anos's words. He wasn't just meant to fight or destroy. He was meant to control the very fabric of the battlefield, to shift the odds in his favor without relying on brute force. With a deep breath, Naruto closed his eyes. His mind reached inward, touching the essence of time, the very currents that flowed through the battlefield. He could feel it, the tension in the air, the passage of time, the way it all bent and twisted under the weight of the conflict. But that was the problem. Time here was distorted, twisted by those who did not understand it. It was not flowing as it should. And this chaos had spread to the very earth beneath his feet. His eyes snapped open. Naruto raised his hand, a surge of energy flowing through him. He reached out with his mind, seeking to correct the imbalance, to reset the flow of time itself. Time wasn't just a line. It was a web of interconnected threads. All he had to do was find the weak points, the places where time had been artificially altered. And he could mend them. The battlefield around him shifted. Where once there had been crumbling ruins and endless chaos, the land began to heal. The earth cracked and reshaped itself, the damage undone as the flow of time was restored to its natural state. The air grew still. The clouds slowly parted, and the once dying field was now lush and vibrant once again. For a brief moment, everything stood still. Naruto stood there, chest heaving as he took in the scene. His heart pounded, his mind racing as the weight of what he had just done settled in. He hadn't just manipulated time, he had reshaped reality itself. The battlefield had been a reflection of chaotic destruction. But now, it was a living testament to his control over the forces of time and existence. But his work wasn't over. From the edges of the battlefield, shadows began to move. They were figures, dark and indistinct, their movements deliberate and dangerous. Naruto's instincts flared. These were not mere illusions. They were the forces that sought to manipulate time and existence for their own gain. They were his test. He could feel their malevolent intent, their hunger for control. They had sensed the shift, felt the change in the fabric of reality, and they would not let it go unchallenged. One of the figures stepped forward, its form becoming clearer as it approached. It was tall, cloaked in dark robes, with eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Its presence radiated an aura of malice and power, a being that sought only domination. It spoke, its voice chilling and cold. You think you can simply undo the work of those who truly understand the nature of time? The figure said, its voice echoing across the field. You are nothing but a child playing at forces beyond your comprehension. This world was shaped by us, by those who master time. You cannot simply change it as you will. Naruto's eyes narrowed as the figure spoke. His heart raced with a renewed sense of purpose. This was what he had trained for. This was the true test of his understanding of time and existence. He wasn't just meant to correct the flow of time. He was meant to stand against those who would twist it for their own gain. No, Naruto said, his voice steady as he took a step forward. I understand more than you think. Time and existence aren't something to be controlled for personal gain. You don't own it. You don't understand it. But I do. And that's why I'm going to stop you. The figure's eyes flared with anger. But it didn't move, yet. Fool! The figure hissed. You may think you can control time. But you are just a child. We have lived for eons. You do not yet comprehend the true cost of such power. Naruto's eyes glinted with an unshakable resolve. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for a future where time and existence weren't twisted and manipulated by those who sought to control it. His voice rang out, filled with an energy that was both new and familiar. I don't need to understand everything, Naruto said. I don't need to control everything. But I do know this. Time doesn't belong to anyone. Not to you. Not to me. It belongs to everyone. And I'm going to make sure it stays that way. The moment the words left his mouth, time seemed to slow. The battlefield, once again, shifted. This time under Naruto's full control. He was no longer just a player on the field. He was the architect of it. Time bent to his will. But it didn't twist or distort. It flowed as it should. As it was meant to. And in that moment, Naruto understood. This was his purpose. To protect the flow of time and existence. To ensure that no one could manipulate it for their own selfish ends. His journey wasn't just about gaining power. It was about preserving the balance. And that meant standing against those who would destroy it. As the figure recoiled, Naruto prepared for the next challenge. As the figure before Naruto recoiled, the air crackled with a palpable tension. The malevolent being, cloaked in shadows, gathered its energy, preparing to unleash its wrath. But Naruto wasn't intimidated. He stood tall, his gaze unwavering, eyes alight with the fire of determination. Time bent around him like a living thing, a force that he now commanded, and with it, he had the power to change the very rules of the battlefield. The shadowed figure raised its hand, and the ground trembled beneath its will. Dark tendrils of energy shot forward, seeking to consume everything in their path. But Naruto was already ahead of the game. With a mere thought, the threads of time stretched and recoiled, reversing the flow of the attack before it could even reach him. In a flash, Naruto moved. His speed was no longer constrained by the limits of his former self. His movements blurred as he reappeared before the figure, his hand already outstretched. He was not just fighting for victory anymore, he was fighting for the future. For balance. For truth. The cloaked figure's eyes widened in shock, realizing that its attack had been undone before it even began to take shape. But before it could react, Naruto's voice rang out. You don't understand, Naruto said, his voice calm yet filled with an undeniable strength. Time doesn't belong to those who think they can bend it to their will. You can manipulate it, twist it, but it will always fight back. The universe itself fights back against those who don't respect its balance. The figure growled in frustration, dark energy swirling around it like a storm. It was beginning to understand that Naruto was no mere child. It was facing something far more dangerous than it had anticipated. With a growl of its own, the figure thrust both hands forward, unleashing a powerful wave of energy that seemed to warp the very fabric of reality. Space itself contorted, and time seemed to freeze for a moment. The battlefield became a prison of distorted dimensions, where the rules of reality no longer applied. But Naruto didn't falter. He closed his eyes, feeling the pulse of time around him. The distortion wasn't a trap. It was an opportunity. An opportunity to prove his mastery over the flow of existence. He raised his hand slowly, the flow of time within him like a well of infinite potential. With a single thought, the distorted reality around them began to unravel. The twisted space began to revert, returning to its natural state as Naruto's command of time took hold. The waves of dark energy that had once threatened to engulf him dissipated into nothingness. The battlefield, once consumed by chaos, returned to its peaceful form, the land healing as if the battle had never even occurred. The cloaked figure watched in shock and disbelief. Its power had been nothing against the force Naruto now wielded. Impossible, it hissed, its voice filled with both anger and fear. You can't control time like this. You can't. I don't control time, Naruto interrupted, his voice ringing out with a newfound certainty. I respect it. I understand it. Time is not a weapon. It's a force that should be protected. And I will protect it. With a gesture, Naruto sent a wave of energy cascading toward the figure. But it wasn't an attack. It was a restoration. The dark figure tried to resist. But it was too late. The being's very existence began to unravel, unable to stand against the natural flow of time. It writhed, its form dissolving into the ether, fading away into nothingness as time reasserted itself. As the figure vanished, Naruto felt the weight of the moment settle over him. His mastery over time and existence had just taken its first true step into fruition. He had reshaped the battlefield, reversed the destruction, and restored balance. But there was still more to do. Enos watched from the sidelines, an unreadable expression on his face. His arms were crossed, and his eyes gleamed with a mixture of approval and curiosity. He had expected this outcome, but the speed at which Naruto had adapted and mastered his abilities surprised even him. This was the moment of change, a turning point for Naruto, and Enos was ready to see where this path would lead. You've done well, Enos said finally, his voice cutting through the silence that followed the battle. But this was only a small test. There are far greater forces in the universe who would seek to disrupt the balance of time and existence. What you've done here is a mere reflection of the challenges that await you. Naruto nodded, his eyes still burning with determination. He knew this was just the beginning. He had faced one enemy, but there would be many more, and not all of them would be as easy to defeat. His grip tightened as he clenched his fists. I'm ready. I won't let anyone destroy what we've built, what we've learned. I won't let anyone twist time to their will. Enos's lips curled into a faint smile. Good. But remember, Naruto, power alone is not enough to preserve the balance. You must understand when to act and when to wait, when to use force and when to hold back. Time is not a tool to be used recklessly. If you are to protect it, you must learn patience. Naruto paused, thinking about Enos's words. Patience. It was something he had struggled with in the past. He had always rushed headlong into situations, eager to prove himself. But now, with the knowledge he had gained, he understood the gravity of what Enos was saying. I will learn, Naruto said, his voice resolute. I'll learn how to use my power properly. How to protect time and existence without destroying what I'm trying to save. Enos studied him for a moment longer, then nodded approvingly. Good. You're starting to see the bigger picture. Time and existence are not just forces to be shaped. They are a tapestry. And you are one thread in that tapestry. Understand your place, and you will become more powerful than you ever imagined. The world around them shimmered for a moment before shifting again. This time, the battlefield vanished entirely, replaced by a serene, quiet landscape. It was a tranquil scene, with soft grass beneath Naruto's feet and a gentle breeze blowing through the trees. It was a peaceful place, one that felt almost timeless. You are now ready for the next stage, Enos said, his voice steady. Your journey is just beginning. But now, you must travel to the heart of the world itself, to the source of time. It is there that you will face the greatest challenge of all. Naruto's eyes widened with curiosity. The heart of the world? The source of time? He was ready. He had learned so much already. But he knew there was so much more to understand. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for the very fabric of existence. With a deep breath, Naruto took his first step forward into the unknown. The journey would be difficult, and the challenges ahead would be unlike anything he had ever faced. But he was no longer the same boy who had once struggled to find his place in the world. He was a force of nature now, a protector of time and existence itself. And he would not fail. Naruto's steps were measured, his heart steady as he walked through the tranquil landscape. Each movement felt deliberate, as if the universe itself was watching, waiting for him to make his next choice. The wind swirled around him, whispering forgotten secrets of the world. There was no doubt in his mind now. This journey was more than just about power. It was about understanding the very essence of existence, the core of time itself. As he moved forward, the serene landscape around him slowly began to change. The peaceful grassland shifted into an expansive, towering forest. The trees stretched toward the sky, their trunks thick and ancient, their branches weaving a canopy that seemed to shield the world beneath. It was a strange place, alive, yet still. The air was thick with a heavy, ancient energy. Like the land itself carried the memories of eons. Enos appeared beside him without a sound. His presence as imposing as ever. "We are entering the heart of time now, Naruto," he said, his tone neutral but still laced with authority. "This forest is a manifestation of time itself. It represents the flow of all things, growth, decay, cycles that repeat. But not all who come here understand what they see. You must be prepared to confront both the beauty and the danger that lie within." Naruto glanced at Enos, his expression resolute. "I'm ready. I've come this far, there's no turning back." Enos's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of respect passing through them. "Good. But remember, the heart of time is not just a place. It is a force, a will, one that can test even the most powerful beings. You must be mindful of what you encounter here. It will not be kind to those who do not respect it." The air grew heavier as they ventured deeper into the forest. The ground beneath them seemed to pulse with life, like the heartbeat of the universe itself. The trees whispered softly in the wind, their leaves shimmering with a faint golden light. The deeper they went, the more intense the feeling became, as if time itself was pressing against them, testing their resolve. Suddenly, the quiet was shattered by a low rumbling sound. The earth trembled beneath Naruto's feet, and the trees around them began to shake violently. The sky overhead darkened, and shadows swirled in the air. It felt as though the very fabric of reality was being ripped apart. Enos remained calm, his stance unshaken. "The heart of time tests you, Naruto. It will not allow any who are not worthy to pass. This is the trial of existence. One you must face if you are to master the power you wield." From the depths of the forest, something massive began to stir. The ground cracked open, and from the chasm emerged a colossal figure. It was not a physical being, but something far more ancient, a manifestation of time's wrath. Its body was an ever-shifting mass of clocks, gears, and shifting sands. Its face a blur of faces from across time. It towered over them, radiating an overwhelming aura of power and authority. Naruto stood his ground, his mind racing as he assessed the situation. The creature, though terrifying, wasn't just an enemy, it was a trial. A test of his control over time and existence. It was a creature born from the very fabric of reality, designed to test those who sought to shape it. The creature spoke, its voice a deep, resonating hum that echoed through Naruto's bones. "You seek to control time. You seek to reshape existence. But do you understand the cost of such power? Boy, do you know what it means to wield time itself?" Naruto's eyes narrowed. He could feel the weight of its words. But there was no hesitation in him. He had come too far. He wasn't going to be intimidated by a manifestation of time. "I understand," Naruto said, his voice steady and unwavering. "I don't seek to control time. I seek to protect it. I understand the balance of existence, and I won't let anyone disrupt that balance. I know what I'm doing, and I know the cost. But I'll carry that burden." The creature seemed to pause, its many eyes flickering as it assessed Naruto. For a long moment, there was only silence, as if time itself was holding its breath. Then, it spoke again. "Very well, boy. If you truly understand the cost, then prove it. Face me." In an instant, the world around them shattered, replaced by a never-ending expanse of time. Endless clocks, spiraling galaxies, and cascading waterfalls of sand. Time itself stretched out before Naruto, as if he were standing in the center of the universe, surrounded by the endless possibilities of existence. But the creature was not merely an illusion. It was a living force, a being of pure time. And as it moved, it manipulated the very flow of time around them. The space warped and shifted, the flow of time accelerating and slowing at its whim. The environment constantly changed, and with each movement of the creature, the rules of reality itself seemed to bend. Naruto's heart pounded in his chest as the battle began. But instead of panicking, he closed his eyes, focusing on the flow of time. He reached out with his mind, feeling the threads of reality around him. Time wasn't something to be bent at will. It was something to be understood, to be shaped with precision, not recklessness. He opened his eyes, and the battle began. The creature's first move was a sudden acceleration of time. A rapid forward thrust that sent Naruto hurtling through the ages, his body aging and decaying at an alarming rate. But Naruto had prepared for this. With a thought, he halted the flow of time around himself, freezing his body in place. The effects of time halting just before they could take hold. "Is that all you've got?" Naruto taunted, his voice full of confidence. "I control time, not the other way around." With a flick of his wrist, Naruto rewound time, sending the creature's previous attacks into reverse. The endless clocks and gears began to grind in reverse as he manipulated the timeline. He could feel the tension of time bending beneath his will. But he pushed it further. The creature was powerful, but it was predictable. Its attacks were rooted in the manipulation of time, something that Naruto now fully understood. The creature roared in frustration, its many eyes flashing with fury. "You dare challenge me? You are but a child, playing with forces you do not understand." But Naruto was no longer the child who had struggled to find his place in the world. He was something greater now, something that understood the very essence of existence. With a decisive motion, Naruto reached out, not to fight the creature, but to bend time itself. He accelerated its aging process, turning the very essence of the creature into dust. The massive, shifting form began to break down, its gears grinding to a halt as the flow of time consumed it from within. The creature, once a fearsome manifestation of power, began to disintegrate under the weight of time's true nature. When the last of it vanished, the world around Naruto settled. The swirling, shifting landscape of time collapsed into a single point. An empty, quiet space that felt both infinite and finite at once. Enos watched in silence as the creature disintegrated. His eyes held a quiet respect as he looked at Naruto, the boy who had just faced the heart of time itself and emerged victorious. "You passed the trial," Enos said, his voice heavy with meaning. "You now understand what it means to wield the power of time. But this is just the beginning. The forces you will face in the future will not be so easily overcome. But now, you are ready. Ready to take your place as the guardian of time." Naruto nodded, his heart still racing with the intensity of the battle. But beneath that, he felt a calm, a certainty that he had made the right choice. Time was not just a power, it was a responsibility. "I'll protect it," Naruto vowed. "I'll make sure that no one abuses it. No one distorts it for their own gain." Enos nodded once more, then turned toward the horizon, where a new journey awaited them. The next step was already calling, and Naruto was ready to face it. The path ahead was long, but it no longer seemed daunting. He had mastered the heart of time. Now, he would learn to protect it. The tranquil space around them seemed to shimmer, the calm after the storm settling in as Naruto absorbed the weight of the moment. Time, reality, and existence itself were now his to command. But the responsibility that came with that power was something that would never leave him. He had passed the trial, but there were still many questions left unanswered, many trials yet to face. Enos, sensing the gravity of Naruto's thoughts, spoke once more, his voice firm but tempered with a touch of insight. "The heart of time has acknowledged you, Naruto. You've proven your strength, your will, and your understanding. But the journey ahead will not be easy. Power without purpose is meaningless. You must continue to grow, not just in power, but in wisdom. Naruto's gaze shifted to Anos. I know. I understand that now. But what comes next? What do I do with this power? Anos turned to face him, his expression unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that suggested approval. You have the power to shape the flow of time, to protect it from those who would seek to corrupt it. But there are forces in this universe that operate outside the laws of time. They are beings who do not bend to the natural order, who defy even the most fundamental truths. These beings, you must confront them. Naruto's mind raced as he processed Anos's words. He knew there were dangerous people in every universe, those who would seek to manipulate time for their own gain. But to confront forces that operated outside the laws of time, that was a different kind of enemy. You mean there are beings who can't be affected by time? Naruto asked, the thought both daunting and intriguing. Anos nodded, his gaze sharp and unwavering. Yes. The multiverse is vast, and with that vastness comes many dangers. Some beings are not bound by time. They exist outside its flow. Some are gods. Others are entities older than existence itself. But they are not infallible. You, Naruto, are the key to ensuring they do not unravel the fabric of reality. You must protect the flow of time, of life. And when it's necessary, you must confront them. Naruto's fists clenched, determination surging through him. His journey had always been about protecting those he cared for, and now that he held the power of time itself, he couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands. He had already faced impossible odds before. But this was different. This was a battle for the very existence of reality. I won't let anyone destroy time or reality. I'll protect them. I'll do whatever it takes, Naruto vowed, his voice unwavering. Anos studied him for a moment before nodding, his approval clear. Good. Then it's time you learned what it means to confront these threats. Your journey won't just be about protecting time. It will be about understanding the deep connection between all things. The balance between time, space, and existence. The interconnectedness of the universe. Naruto's expression grew more serious. He wasn't just a protector anymore. He was becoming something far greater. A guardian of the very fabric of existence. His powers weren't just a means to fight. They were a responsibility. And he would need to master them fully before he could face the entities that Anos spoke of. The world around them began to shift once again. The peaceful landscape warping into something more ominous. The sky darkened, and the wind howled as a massive portal began to form in the distance. The colors swirling within it were unlike anything Naruto had ever seen, twisting hues of deep purples, blacks, and silvers, as if the very fabric of reality was being pulled apart. This is where your journey begins, Anos said, his voice resonating with a calm finality. Step through that portal, and you will be taken to the first of many trials. A test of your ability to understand and control the flow of time in ways you have yet to comprehend. Naruto nodded without hesitation. There was no fear in him now, only resolve. His fists clenched as he stared at the swirling portal, the unknown beckoning him forward. He knew that what lay beyond was not an easy challenge, but he had already proven to himself that he could face anything. He had the power to control time. But it was more than that. It was the knowledge that he could shape the future, protect the present, and undo the past. He was ready, taking a step forward. Naruto entered the portal, feeling a strange energy pulse around him as the very laws of reality seemed to bend. The world around him twisted and flickered. His senses stretched to their limits. But instead of being overwhelmed, Naruto focused. He reached out, feeling the flow of time and space, guiding himself through the shifting tides of existence. When the world finally solidified, Naruto found himself standing on a vast, barren wasteland. The ground beneath his feet was cracked and lifeless, and the sky above was a sickly shade of red. In the distance, towering figures loomed, beings whose presence seemed to warp the very space around them. They were impossibly tall, their bodies constructed from shards of broken reality, their faces expressionless masks of power. Anos's voice echoed in Naruto's mind, guiding him even though he was no longer physically present. These are the time wraiths. Beings that exist outside the natural flow of time. They have no past, no future. They only exist in the present, forever disconnected from the timeline. They are agents of chaos, whose very existence threatens to unravel the fabric of reality. Naruto's gaze hardened as he observed the wraiths. They were the very embodiment of what Anos had warned him about, beings who defied time itself. But there was no fear in his heart. He had come this far, and he was ready to face whatever came next. The time wraiths began to move toward him, their movements slow but deliberate. With each step they took, the ground beneath them cracked, and time itself seemed to distort. The air was thick with the pressure of their presence, as if the very concept of time was breaking down with every movement. Naruto raised his hand, feeling the flow of time around him. He didn't need to rush. He didn't need to fight recklessly. He needed to understand their existence. He needed to find a way to restore balance. In an instant, time began to slow around the wraiths. Their movements became sluggish, as if the very force of time was pushing back against them. Naruto stepped forward. His gaze locked onto the nearest wraith, and he reached out with his power. Time around the creature rippled, and for a moment, everything stood still. Naruto closed his eyes, concentrating. He wasn't trying to destroy the wraiths. He was trying to restore them. Their existence, their disconnection from time, was the threat. He reached deep into the fabric of time and, with a single thought, began to weave their essence back into the flow of reality. The wraiths writhed in agony as their existence was forcibly reconnected to the timeline, their broken forms beginning to stabilize as time began to repair the damage they had caused. They were not destroyed, they were healed. Their disconnection mended, and with it, the threat they posed to reality was neutralized. When the last wraith faded from existence, the world around Naruto returned to its natural state. The red sky slowly returning to a peaceful blue. The barren land began to heal, and life slowly began to reappear, as if the fabric of reality itself was repairing itself from the damage caused by the wraiths. Naruto stood tall, his breath steady, the weight of the battle already beginning to fade. He had passed another trial. He had proven his understanding of time, and his ability to heal, not just destroy. But he knew that this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, and there were many more challenges ahead. Anos's voice returned, this time full of approval. Well done, Naruto. You have proven that you understand the true nature of time. But there are many more trials ahead. Stay focused. The path will grow more difficult, but with each step, you will grow stronger. Naruto nodded, his resolve solidifying. He had faced the first of many trials, and with each challenge, he would grow. He would protect time. He would protect reality. And nothing, no force, no entity, would stand in his way. The journey was far from over, but Naruto was ready to face whatever came next. As Naruto stood in the now repaired world, the realization began to settle in. This was no longer just about protecting time. He was becoming the very embodiment of it. A force so intertwined with existence itself that the concept of limits no longer applied. His journey had only just begun. Yet he felt the weight of 1,000 possibilities stretching out before him, each one filled with challenges, triumphs, and dangers. The landscape around him continued to change, its healing process slow but steady. Flowers began to bloom where there had once been only barren soil, and the air, once thick with the remnants of destruction, now hummed with life. Time itself had reset the world, re-establishing the flow of existence. But it wasn't just the land that had healed. Naruto could feel the power within him shifting. The connection he had to the threads of time, once abstract and unfamiliar, now felt instinctive, as though it were as natural as breathing. He could sense the faintest pulse of life in everything around him. The flow of time in the birds, the trees, the very wind that carried the scent of the reborn land. Good work, Naruto. You're growing stronger. Anos's voice echoed in his mind, a steady presence that was becoming familiar. But this is just a glimpse of what lies ahead. You've confronted the time wraiths, but that was only a fraction of the chaos that can exist outside the laws of time. The real challenge will be the entities who are truly untouchable by time. Naruto's gaze hardened as he felt the weight of Anos's words. He had already faced more than he thought possible. But he knew this was only the beginning. He had passed his first test. But there were far greater forces lurking in the shadows of reality, beings who would challenge him in ways he couldn't yet fully comprehend. "I'm ready for whatever comes next," Naruto responded, his voice full of determination. Enos didn't immediately reply, but the stillness in the air seemed to resonate with approval. "You will need more than just power to face what's ahead. You've already begun to understand time. But you'll need to understand the balance of all things. Time doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of a greater whole, the fabric of existence itself. When you're ready, I will show you how to use that understanding." Naruto nodded, but there was a lingering thought in the back of his mind. He had already fought battles where his power alone could turn the tide, but facing beings who existed outside the natural flow of time, beings whose very nature defied the rules of reality, was an entirely different beast. "What do you mean by balance?" Naruto asked, his brow furrowed. "I know I have the power to change time. But what happens if I overstep? Can't the world just break apart?" Anos's presence felt heavier now, more grounded. Time is just one part of the grand design of the universe. Without it, nothing can exist. But there are forces in the universe that disrupt that design, beings whose presence can cause reality itself to buckle. Time must remain in balance with other aspects of existence: space, matter, and energy. If one of these elements is thrown out of sync, it can distort everything else. You must learn to weave these threads together, or the fabric of reality will tear. Naruto closed his eyes, taking in Anos's words. He had always understood the importance of balance. After all, that was what had driven him to protect the people he cared for, to seek peace, and to stop the war that threatened his world. But this was different. This wasn't just about peace between people or nations. This was about the peace of the entire universe, of every living thing, every atom, every moment in time. If I can understand all these elements, time, space, energy, matter, will I be able to stop the entities you spoke of? The ones who defy time? Naruto asked, his voice steady. Anos was silent for a moment, then spoke, his voice quieter than before. "You will have to. They are the ones who will seek to unravel the balance of the universe. They will test every part of you, not just your strength but your understanding. They will tempt you to use your power recklessly, to break the flow of time in ways you cannot yet imagine. The path ahead is treacherous. But if you can master the balance, you can stop them." Naruto's jaw tightened. He knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. But with each word from Anos, his resolve hardened. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for the entire universe, for the stability of existence itself. "I won't fail," Naruto vowed, his voice low but filled with certainty. "I'll learn everything I need to. I'll protect time. I'll protect the balance." The wind picked up around him, carrying with it the promise of new challenges. The calm before the storm had passed, and the true journey was beginning. The very fabric of the universe awaited, ready to test him at every turn. Anos's voice returned, this time with a slight edge of finality. "We will begin your next lesson. The path will grow more complex from here on out. Are you ready?" Naruto didn't hesitate. "Let's do this." The ground beneath him shifted once again, and the landscape morphed into a new form. A vast city appeared on the horizon, its towering spires cutting into the sky, shining with a strange, ethereal light. There was something off about it, a subtle distortion in the air, as though reality itself was warping around it. "This city is the next trial," Anos explained. "It's not what it seems. Time flows here differently than in the rest of the universe. The laws that govern it are altered. Here, you will face an entity whose power is so vast that it bends the very concept of time itself. Be on your guard." Naruto felt a shiver of unease slide down his spine. This wasn't going to be like the last trial. The distortion in the air around the city was palpable, a pressure that seemed to press against him from all sides. Someone, was waiting for him there. Someone who had the power to alter the very flow of time. With a deep breath, Naruto stepped forward, his mind focused and his senses alert. He could feel the swirling energies of the universe around him, the very fabric of reality stretching and bending as he walked toward the city. He wasn't just walking into the unknown. He was walking into the heart of a trial that would push him to the limits of his understanding, a trial that would test the very core of his being. He had faced many battles before, But this was different. The battle for time itself was only beginning. And Naruto Uzumaki was ready to fight. As Naruto stepped forward, the air around him felt heavier, as if the very atmosphere was charged with the energy of 1,000 unseen forces. The city before him shimmered in a strange, almost dreamlike way. As if it were an illusion, the architecture twisted in impossible shapes, as though time itself was bending to the whims of whoever controlled this place. Every step he took, the ground beneath him seemed to shift. It wasn't like walking on solid earth anymore. It was as if his feet were sinking into a river of time, each moment pulling him deeper into its flow, making him aware of every second that passed. It was unnerving, but Naruto's resolve remained unwavering. This wasn't the first time he'd walked into the unknown, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. I can feel it, Naruto muttered to himself. This place, it's wrong. Everything's out of sync. Enos's voice echoed in his mind, sharp and commanding. This is the temporal nexus. A place where the flow of time is manipulated, and reality itself is reshaped. It is home to the entity known as the Time Architect, a being who warps time to fit its desires. The laws of time here are not like those of the outside world. It has control over what happens in this city, bending time into whatever form it wishes. Naruto's brow furrowed. Time Architect? So this being can literally rewrite time itself? Yes, Enos replied, his tone heavy. The Time Architect can bend the flow of time within this domain. Past, present, and future blur into one. And the very concept of causality is no longer absolute. You must face this entity if you wish to learn more about the true nature of time. But beware. Its power is vast. It is an entity born of time's contradictions. As he walked further into the city, Naruto began to notice strange phenomena around him. People moved in slow motion, their faces frozen in expressions of fear, as if time had caught them in a moment they couldn't escape. Buildings flickered between states of destruction and pristine condition, as though they were being rewound and fast-forwarded on a constant loop. The sky overhead shifted from dawn to dusk in mere moments, the clouds swirling unnaturally, a visual representation of the chaos within. Naruto's senses were heightened, but even with his understanding of time, he couldn't make sense of the strange reality around him. His ability to manipulate time allowed him to slow things down or speed them up. But this place, it felt as if time itself had abandoned all logic. I'm getting closer, he said, more to himself than to anyone else. His footsteps echoed in the distorted silence, the sound reverberating unnaturally as if the city itself were listening, waiting. And then, he saw it. At the center of the city, perched atop a throne made of swirling time shards, was the Time Architect, a tall, imposing figure. Their form was cloaked in flowing robes made of fragmented realities, shifting constantly between ages and states. A face obscured by an intricate mask, an amalgamation of countless reflections and time periods, stared down at Naruto. Their eyes glowed with an eerie golden light, and their presence seemed to freeze the very air. You've come, Naruto Uzumaki. The Time Architect's voice resonated, deep and echoing as though it existed in multiple places at once. I've been waiting for you. Naruto's hands clenched into fists. He had faced countless enemies. But this being, this entity that manipulated time itself, was different. It wasn't about brute force. It was about understanding. And that understanding was something Naruto had yet to master fully. I don't know who you are, Naruto said, his voice steady, though there was a hint of unease in it. But I'm here to stop you. I won't let you keep twisting time like this. The Time Architect laughed softly, a sound that sent a chill down Naruto's spine. You think you understand time? Do you? You, who only recently gained the ability to manipulate it? You are nothing more than a fleeting moment in the grand timeline. I have existed beyond the scope of time itself for eons. I have seen time fracture and rebuild, witness to the endless cycles of creation and destruction. You can't stop me. Not with your limited understanding. Naruto's eyes narrowed, but he didn't flinch. I may not understand everything about time, but I know one thing. I'm not going to let anyone, or anything, control it like you are. The Time Architect smiled beneath their mask, an unsettling expression that seemed to stretch across eons. Very well, Naruto Uzumaki. If you wish to challenge me, you will have to first prove that you understand the very essence of time. Suddenly, the world around Naruto began to warp violently. The ground cracked and split, and reality bent as the Time Architect waved their hand. The sky tore open like fabric, revealing endless alternate realities, each one a different version of Naruto. Some of these Narutos stood tall and proud. Others knelt in defeat. Some were weak, others strong, each existing in a different point in time. You see, Naruto Uzumaki, time is not linear. It is a vast web, intertwined with endless possibilities. You're one thread in that web. But I can see all of it. I am the weaver of time. And you? The Time Architect's voice twisted with the force of 1,000 realities crashing together. You will be tested. Before Naruto could react, one of the alternate Narutos lunged at him. Their movements so fast that they seemed to exist in multiple places at once. The attack was swift, and Naruto barely managed to block it. The alternate version of himself smirked, taunting him with every move. You will never defeat me. Not as you are now, the alternate Naruto said, their voice cold and distant. You don't even understand what you're up against. You can manipulate time. Yes. But time is not something you can control without consequences. Naruto gritted his teeth. He knew that this was not just a test of strength. It was a test of his very understanding of time. He had to think beyond his usual tactics. He couldn't just fight the versions of himself. He needed to stop time from unraveling in this place. Closing his eyes, Naruto reached deep into himself, drawing on the immense power he had gained over the past trials. He focused not on the attacks or the chaos around him, but on the flow of time itself, the ebb and flow of every moment, every possibility. Stop! He shouted, his voice ringing with authority as he activated his power. Time itself seemed to halt, freezing every version of himself mid-motion. The world flickered as reality buckled under his command. The alternate Narutos suspended in time. For a brief moment, everything was still. The Time Architect's amused expression faded, replaced by something that seemed almost like curiosity. Impressive. But you're still a child playing with the strings of a vast and ancient power. Naruto didn't respond immediately. Instead, he focused, reaching out with his power to pull the different versions of himself into a single point in time. He didn't want to fight them. He needed to understand them. He needed to understand the decisions that led each version of himself down different paths. The frozen versions of Naruto flickered like ghostly echoes, each one representing a choice, a different future. With a single thought, Naruto drew them closer, trying to reconcile their differences, trying to understand what had led them all to this point. One by one, the alternate versions began to fade, dissolving into the fabric of time as Naruto absorbed their knowledge, their experiences, their failures. He saw moments of doubt, of strength, of pain, and he saw the threads that bound them all together. The Time Architect watched in silence, their golden eyes narrowing. You passed the first test, Naruto Uzumaki. But there will be more. Much more. Naruto opened his eyes, his expression serious. I won't back down. I understand now. Time isn't just a tool or weapon. It's a part of who we are. A part of everything. And I won't let you destroy it. The Time Architect's mask shifted slightly, as if acknowledging Naruto's growth. Very well. You have proven yourself worthy of the next stage. But be warned, Naruto Uzumaki, time, like all things, is fleeting. You will soon understand the true cost of wielding such power. With those final words, the world around Naruto began to shift again. The next trial waiting just beyond the horizon. The landscape around Naruto began to warp once again. The ground beneath his feet rippling like water disturbed by a stone. He felt the pressure of time pushing in from every direction. The fabric of reality stretching and compressing, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. The Time Architect, now standing beside him in this shifting space, didn't speak immediately but observed Naruto with a measure of detached curiosity. Naruto's pulse quickened as he sensed the changes in the air. This was no ordinary space, and the next trial was upon him. It was clear that the Time Architect's power was vast. But Naruto now knew that understanding time wasn't just about wielding it. It was about balance. He'd felt the way time itself had bent. The distortions, the reality-altering forces at play. This is the next test. The Time Architect's voice echoed. You faced the illusion of past, present, and future. But now, you will experience something far more dangerous, time's decay. Time does not just flow forward. It also unravels. It can be consumed, corroded, and even forgotten. In this domain, you will see what happens when time erodes, when it stops being a force of growth and instead becomes a force of destruction. The space around Naruto seemed to ripple more violently. And before he could react, the world cracked open, and he found himself standing on a barren wasteland. The skies were dark, filled with swirling clouds of energy, and the ground was cracked, with jagged pieces of stone scattered about like the remnants of some ancient catastrophe. Time here was broken. There was no sense of progression, no rhythm. It was as though everything was frozen in an endless, dying moment. This is the decay zone, the time architect said, their presence looming over Naruto. Even though they stood apart, here, time is corrupted. It doesn't just stand still. It rots. It decays. And it will eventually eat itself. But unlike the illusion you faced, there's no reset here. Time will decay in its purest form. You can't just stop it. Naruto clenched his fists, feeling the eerie pressure of the decaying time around him. He could feel his energy being siphoned, as though the very air in this place was draining him. He steadied his breath. This wasn't a place where strength alone would carry him through. He needed to adapt, to use what he had learned about the balance of time and its essence. The decay. It's not just about destruction, Naruto muttered to himself. It's about how time can rot away everything it touches, memories, people, even entire histories. Exactly, the time architect's voice resonated through the wasteland. When time decays, everything associated with it becomes susceptible to erasure. The question you must ask yourself is, how do you preserve what is worth saving? Can you hold on to what matters when everything else is slipping away? And can you fight time's very nature without destroying the rest of existence? Naruto felt the weight of the question. But instead of answering immediately, he surveyed his surroundings. The land was bleak. The remnants of some forgotten civilization scattered like forgotten dreams. Time itself seemed to warp and wither before his eyes. What once might have been a vibrant city now stood as skeletal remains, its structures decaying into nothingness. Then, in the distance, a flicker of light caught his eye. A pulse. A heartbeat of something untouched by the corruption. Without thinking, Naruto began moving toward it. His footsteps slow at first, testing the ground beneath him. Each step felt heavy, as though even the act of walking was a strain on his energy. He reached out with his senses, but the distortion in the air made it hard to focus. It was as if reality itself was deteriorating, making everything feel distorted. As he neared the source of the light, he found himself standing before a lone figure, a woman, who stood motionless at the edge of a broken building. Her appearance was almost ethereal, as if she were a fragment of time itself that had managed to survive the decay. Her features were delicate, and her hair flowed as though caught in an unseen breeze, shimmering in the decaying light. She turned her head slowly, and her eyes met his. They were clear, bright, almost unnaturally so, amidst the rotting environment around them. "You're the first to reach me," the woman said, her voice calm and soothing despite the chaos surrounding them. "And you're the first who hasn't fallen into the decay." Naruto didn't know why, but he felt an instinctive pull toward her. She was something different. Not like the other versions of himself he'd seen. She seemed to exist outside the decay, like a pure strand of time in a sea of rot. "Who are you?" Naruto asked, trying to keep his voice steady despite the overwhelming pressure from the decaying time around him. "I am a guardian," she replied. "I protect what little is left of time's natural flow. I protect the fragments, the pieces of time that are being erased." Naruto's eyes widened as the pieces began to fall into place. "You're the remnants of time itself? The ones that survived the decay?" The woman nodded, her gaze solemn. "Yes. The decay consumes everything it touches. Time is not just linear. It is an intricate weave of moments, memories, and experiences. But once those threads break, once they are consumed by the decay, they are lost. What I protect is the remnants. What can be salvaged from time's destruction." Naruto felt a surge of understanding. "So, if I stop the decay, I can save everything? I can stop it from eating away at time? The woman's expression shifted slightly, a trace of sadness entering her eyes. It's not that simple. Time, like all things, has its cycles. The decay must be allowed to run its course in some places. But there are ways to slow it, to protect what can be saved. The true question is, will you be willing to sacrifice some things in order to preserve others? Naruto's expression hardened. I won't let time just decay away. I won't let everything be forgotten, lost to the ages. There's always something worth saving. The woman's eyes softened. You're not wrong. But remember, Naruto Uzumaki, time isn't something you can control completely. It is a force that is as chaotic as it is structured. The decay exists for a reason. It is part of time's flow. Naruto stepped forward, determination burning in his eyes. Maybe. But I'll fight to preserve what I can. If I can stop the decay, I will. I'll protect what matters, no matter the cost. The woman held out her hand, her fingers glowing with a faint light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Naruto's own heartbeat. Then take this. Without hesitation, Naruto reached for her hand, feeling the surge of energy flow through him. The warmth of it contrasted sharply with the coldness of the decay around them. For a moment, the entire world seemed to still. And then, Naruto's senses expanded. He could feel the threads of time more clearly now. See how they were interwoven with each other. He could sense the decay spreading like a poison. But he also felt something else. Hope. A faint pulse of life in the midst of it all. You've gained the power to heal the decay. But it will require more than strength to restore time. The woman whispered as she withdrew her hand. Remember, time is a cycle. You must not only protect, but also know when to let go. Naruto nodded, understanding that his power wasn't just about fighting. It was about wisdom. He couldn't save everything, but he could save what mattered. He could fight to preserve balance, to protect the flow of time itself. With renewed determination, Naruto stepped back from the woman, ready to face the final challenge. I won't give up. I'll save what I can, Naruto declared. The woman smiled faintly, her form beginning to fade, becoming one with the decaying time around them. Then, Naruto Uzumaki, you are ready for the final trial. With that, the world shifted once again. The decay was still there, but Naruto could feel the balance beginning to shift in his favor. He wasn't just fighting time anymore, he was becoming its protector. The world around Naruto began to tremble as if it, too, sensed the change within him. The decay that had once consumed everything seemed to pause, its relentless advance slowing just for a moment, as if acknowledging his newfound resolve. The warmth from the woman's hand still lingered within him, an energy that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. He could feel the remnants of time, the fractures and broken threads. But now, instead of simply resisting them, he had a deeper understanding. He wasn't merely standing against time's decay. He was learning to repair it. The barren wasteland, the twisted remnants of broken time, began to shift in front of his eyes. The cracked earth, which had once been cold and empty, now hummed with energy. Pieces of the destroyed city began to regenerate, slowly at first, like plants sprouting in a scorched field. For the first time, Naruto could see what the decay had stolen. The potential of life, the forgotten moments, the histories that had once been. The fractures began to close, the timelines rewinding as if being rewoven by invisible hands. Naruto focused, channeling the power he had been granted. He didn't force time into submission. Instead, he guided it. He reached out with his senses, feeling the delicate threads of time weaving themselves together. There was a harmony here, a quiet understanding that time was not meant to be controlled entirely. Time was meant to flow, but with care, with balance. And in that balance, Naruto found his true strength. You've learned quickly. The time architect's voice echoed through the newly restored space. But even your understanding of time has limits, Naruto Uzumaki. The true test is not in preserving what you know, but in creating what you cannot yet see. Naruto turned to face the time architect, the figure standing tall against the shifting landscape. Their form, once an impenetrable mass of shadows, now shimmered, their true appearance becoming clearer. The time architect was not simply a being of immense power. It was a paradox, a manifestation of time itself. neither malevolent nor benevolent, but a force of nature, existing beyond good or evil. I'm not just here to fix things, Naruto said, his voice calm but filled with determination. I'm here to change things. I've learned that time isn't just something that happens. It's something we shape, something we live through. And if I have the power to change time, I won't let it decay into nothing. The time architect regarded him silently, its glowing eyes never leaving Naruto. For a moment, it seemed to consider something before speaking again. Its voice softer this time, almost approving. Your journey is far from over, Naruto Uzumaki. The true test now is to reconcile your understanding of time with your understanding of destiny. Do you have the strength to face the consequences of the changes you will make? Naruto's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? The time architect raised a hand, and the world around them began to ripple once again. This time, however, it wasn't the decay that Naruto had come to understand, it was something else. The very fabric of reality began to shift, and in its place, a new scene appeared, one that was familiar, yet strange. It was the village of Konaha, but not as it was now. This was the past, a time before Naruto had become the Hokage, before he had faced the struggles of the present. It was a glimpse of what once was. Naruto stood on the streets of the village, watching as younger versions of his friends walked past him, Sasuke, Sakura, Iruka, and the rest. The air was warm, and the sky was clear. It was a peaceful day, free from the shadows of the battles he had fought. But then, as he looked closer, he noticed something troubling. Something was wrong. Sasuke's expression was darker than Naruto remembered, his eyes filled with cold determination. But without the warmth he had come to understand in their later years. Sakura seemed distant, her usual kindness replaced with a look of quiet regret. And as he watched, Naruto felt an intense weight in his chest. Something had changed. The peace they had worked so hard to build had been replaced with something far more fragile. Naruto felt a pull in his chest, a connection to this moment in time. His actions had brought about this peace, but it had come at a cost. He had made choices that had shaped the world around him, for better or worse. Do you see? The time architect's voice rang out from behind him. This is the consequence of change. The people you care about, the bonds you've formed, are not immutable. Every decision, every alteration of time, ripples outward, creating new paths, new destinies. Can you bear to see the consequences of what might have been? Naruto stood frozen in place, his heart racing. He had faced many enemies, overcome countless obstacles. But this was different. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for the future of everyone he loved. The weight of responsibility was crushing, and yet, he felt something else, too. Something that had always guided him. I don't know what the future holds, Naruto said, his voice stronger now, filled with conviction. But I know this. I made my choices. And if I can change something for the better, I'll do it. Even if it means facing the consequences. Even if I have to carry the weight of those decisions. The time architect stood in silence for a moment, the shifting realities around them seeming to hold their breath. Then, the entity spoke again, its voice soft, almost respectful. You are no longer the boy who stumbled into this place. You have learned. And you have proven yourself worthy of the next trial. The village scene began to distort again. And Naruto could feel the pressure building once more. The weight of the past, the present, and the future pressing in on him. He could feel the flow of time, each second slipping away like sand through his fingers, each moment more precious than the last. The world around him collapsed into itself, and he was once again standing alone, this time on the edge of a vast void. Time seemed to stretch endlessly before him, and he could feel the weight of all that he had learned, all that he had gained, and all that he had yet to face. This is your final trial. The time architect's voice echoed, deep and resonant. The truth of time is not just about preserving it, changing it, or understanding it. It is about knowing when to let it go. Your final choice is to determine how much of time you are willing to sacrifice to protect what matters most. Naruto took a deep breath, his eyes steady as he gazed into the endless expanse. He had already made one decision, to fight for the future. Now, he would make another. He would make the ultimate choice, one that would define the course of his destiny and the destiny of the world. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, embracing the unknown. "I'll sacrifice whatever it takes," Naruto said, his voice filled with unwavering resolve, "to protect my friends, my village, and the future." The void before him shifted, and a brilliant light consumed everything. The Time Architect's voice was the last thing Naruto heard before the light swallowed him completely. "You have passed, Naruto Uzumaki. You are ready." And then, everything went silent. The silence was overwhelming. It felt like time itself had stopped, as if the very fabric of reality had been paused in that single, infinite moment. Naruto's senses were flooded with an intense stillness. The weight of everything he had experienced, the trials, the decisions, the consequences, all pressing down on him like a heavy blanket. It was as though every fragment of time, every single moment he had lived through, had converged into this single instant, this singular truth. But then, as if snapping back into existence, Naruto felt the world around him shift once more. The void was gone, replaced by the familiar feeling of solid ground beneath his feet. He blinked and looked around, his surroundings coming into focus. He was no longer in the decaying wasteland of time's corruption. He was standing in a vast expanse of light, a serene, ethereal space that seemed to stretch endlessly. It was neither the past nor the future, but something in between, an eternal moment suspended in time. "You have transcended the trials of time, Naruto Uzumaki." The Time Architect's voice echoed around him, its presence still ever watchful. "You have proven yourself capable of understanding time's essence, its flow, its decay, and its rebirth. But the true test now lies not in what you have learned, but in how you will use this power." Naruto stood tall, his mind racing. He had faced so many challenges, learned so many lessons about time's true nature. But now the final test had come. It wasn't about just surviving or fixing the broken pieces of reality. It was about what he would do with this power, with this knowledge. He clenched his fists, his eyes steady. "I won't let time control me. I will control it, not for myself, but for everyone I care about. I'll make sure no one has to suffer because of what's beyond their control." The space around him seemed to shimmer in response to his words, as if the very nature of time itself was reacting to his resolve. The Time Architect's voice, now imbued with a hint of reverence, responded, "You speak as though you have already made your decision, Naruto Uzumaki. But understand this. The power you now hold is not without consequence. To control time is to hold the very essence of existence in your hands. You can preserve, you can change, and you can protect. But you will also bear the weight of the choices you make." Naruto's expression hardened, his eyes burning with the same intensity he had always had when fighting for his friends, for the future, for his village. He had already made a choice in his heart. He knew the burden that came with power. He'd carried it his entire life. And yet, he was willing to bear it, for the sake of those who depended on him. "I understand," Naruto said, his voice resolute. "But I won't let time slip away. I'll face whatever consequences come. I'll protect the future that matters." There was a long silence, the air around him seemingly holding its breath. Then, the Time Architect's voice once again resonated, but this time with a sense of finality. "Then, it is done. You have transcended the cycle of time. You have become its master. The past, present, and future are no longer bound to you. You are the guardian of time, the one who will shape its flow, who will ensure that the choices of the future are made with care and understanding." The ground beneath Naruto's feet began to glow, the light pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Slowly, the world around him began to shift once more, no longer a void but a manifestation of endless possibilities. He could feel the weight of everything he had learned, the knowledge of countless timelines, the understanding of every decision ever made, and the infinite potential of every future that could be. "You are free now, Naruto Uzumaki," the Time Architect continued. "You are no longer bound by the constraints of time. Your future is yours to shape. What you do with it is entirely up to you." Naruto stood motionless for a moment, his mind flooded with all that he had learned. He could feel the power of time itself coursing through him, an energy like nothing he had ever experienced. It was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. He wasn't just the boy who once struggled to find his place in the world. He wasn't just the Hokage who fought for the peace of his village. He was now something far greater. He was the protector of time itself. And with that realization, something inside him clicked. "I'll make sure the future is bright," Naruto said softly. His voice filled with a quiet promise. "I'll protect the bonds that matter. And I'll make sure no one has to face the weight of time alone." The space around him began to shimmer and blur. And Naruto felt the pull of reality itself. He knew that this journey was far from over. The power he had gained was immense. But with it came responsibility. More than he had ever carried before. He wasn't just a protector of the present. He was the guardian of the future. The keeper of time's delicate balance. But as the world around him continued to fade, Naruto knew one thing for sure. He was ready. Ready to face whatever came next. Ready to protect the ones he loved. And ready to shape the future with his own hands. With a final, powerful surge of energy, Naruto felt himself being pulled back into the world he had once known. The light faded, and the ethereal space dissolved. He opened his eyes to find himself standing once more in the familiar landscape of Konaha, the village of his dreams. The wind blew softly across his face, and the sun shone brightly overhead. For a moment, everything felt normal, peaceful. But Naruto knew better. His power had changed everything. The future was no longer an unknown, but a canvas he could shape with the choices he made. He wasn't just Naruto Uzumaki, the boy who never gave up. He was now the guardian of time, the protector of the future. And as he stood there, surrounded by the friends and allies who had always believed in him, Naruto made a silent promise. He would protect the future. No matter what. Naruto stood in the heart of Konaha, the village he had fought so hard to protect. The familiar sights of the Hokage monument, the bustling streets, and the faces of his friends and allies filled him with a sense of peace. Yet the weight of his new role was never far from his mind. The future, as he now understood it, was not just a series of moments waiting to unfold. It was a tapestry he could influence, one thread at a time. As he walked through the streets, his mind raced with the implications of his newfound power. He could already sense the ripples of time that flowed beneath the surface of reality. The interactions between people. The choices made in every passing moment. Each one connected. Each one affecting the next. It was all within his reach now. And that power felt like both a blessing and a curse. He made his way to the Hokage's office. The towering building that had once symbolized his dreams. His footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. The weight of his responsibility pressing down on him with every step. The door to the office stood open. And inside, the faint hum of activity could be heard. As he stepped through the door, he was greeted by the familiar faces of his closest friends, Shikamaru, Sakura, and Kakashi. "Naruto," Sakura said, her face lighting up with a warm smile. "You're back." Shikamaru, ever the pragmatist, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Kakashi stood silently by the window, his Sharingan eye reflecting the sunlight as he looked out at the village. Naruto took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the room before locking onto Kakashi. The older man's presence had always been a source of guidance for him, even before he had become the Hokage. Now, standing before him with the weight of his new power, Naruto couldn't help but wonder how the old sensei would react to the changes that had come. "You feel different," Kakashi said, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of curiosity. "More focused, I suppose." Naruto chuckled softly, running a hand through his spiky blonde hair. "I guess you could say that. A lot's changed. But I still have a lot to figure out." Shikamaru sighed, leaning back in his chair with his usual nonchalance. "You always have something going on, Naruto. Can't you just enjoy the peace for once?" "I wish it were that easy," Naruto replied, his voice a little more serious now. "But there's something I need to tell you all. I've learned something about time. Something that's bigger than any mission or battle. And it's not just about us anymore. It's about the whole world. The future. I'm not the same person I was before." The room fell silent. Sakura's eyes widened in concern, while Kakashi narrowed his gaze, clearly intrigued but also wary. Shikamaru leaned forward, his usual laid-back demeanor giving way to a more serious expression. "What do you mean?" Kakashi asked. "I've changed," Naruto said, his gaze steady as he looked at each of them. "I've learned to understand time itself. I can see the threads that connect all of us, the paths that we walk. And with that, I have the power to shape those paths, to protect the future, to change things for the better." The room grew tense as his words settled in the air. Sakura was the first to speak, her voice hesitant but filled with concern. "Naruto, what are you saying? You can't change everything. We've always relied on hard work and our bonds to shape our future." "I know," Naruto said, his voice softening. "But it's bigger than that now. I can't ignore the weight of time. The decisions we make now affect everything that comes after us. I have the power to protect the future, to make sure that our village stays safe, that no one has to suffer. But with that comes a responsibility. One I'm still trying to understand." Shikamaru raised his hands, his face creased with thought. "So you're saying you can just bend time to your will?" Naruto hesitated. "It's not that simple. I can't just rewrite everything. But I can see the paths that lead to disaster. And I can prevent them. I can guide things in a way that prevents pain and loss." Kakashi, still standing by the window, turned to face him. "And what about the cost? You said you've learned about time. What happens when you start changing things?" Naruto felt a pang in his chest at the question. He had considered this, and it wasn't something he could ignore. Time was delicate. Even small changes could lead to unexpected consequences. "I don't know yet," Naruto admitted. "But I'm willing to take that risk. I'll bear whatever consequences come. The future is worth it." There was a long silence as the weight of his words hung in the air. Finally, Kakashi nodded slowly, a look of quiet understanding in his eye. "If you're sure, Naruto, then we'll support you. But remember this. No matter how much power you have, you're still human. And no matter how much time you control, there will always be things beyond your reach." Naruto's eyes narrowed, and he nodded, determination burning within him. "I understand. But that's why I had to try. For everyone who's counting on us." Shikamaru sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Great. So now we have to deal with Naruto and his godlike powers." But even he couldn't completely hide the hint of pride in his voice. "Well, I guess that's just how it is now." Sakura smiled, placing a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "Just promise me you won't try to do everything yourself. We're your friends, and we're with you, no matter what." Naruto's face softened as he looked at his friends, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Thanks. I won't forget that." As the conversation turned to practical matters, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. He could feel the weight of the future pressing down on him. But now, he was no longer afraid. He had the power to shape it, to guide it towards something better. The sun was setting over Konaha, casting a warm orange glow over the village. Naruto gazed out the window, his thoughts drifting as he watched the last rays of light fade into the horizon. "I won't let this piece slip away," he muttered to himself, his voice barely audible. "I'll make sure of it." The future was in his hands now. And no matter the cost, he would do everything in his power to protect it. The last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, and the soft glow of Konoha's streets illuminated the Hokage tower. Naruto stood by the window, his thoughts swirling with the weight of the power now resting within him. The quiet peace of the village was almost overwhelming, a stark contrast to the chaos he had once lived through. Yet, beneath that calm exterior, Naruto could feel the pulse of time, like an ever-ticking clock, reminding him of his duty. His hands gripped the window ledge, the cool wood beneath his fingers grounding him as the room behind him hummed with quiet conversation. His friends, his comrades, his family, were all talking, discussing what needed to be done next, what roles they all had in this new, strange reality. But Naruto's mind was elsewhere, lost in thought. "What am I really doing?" he asked himself softly, almost as if the question were meant for the wind itself. "Can I truly shape the future? Can I protect everyone without breaking something?" A slight breeze ruffled his hair as he turned, finding himself back in the present with his friends. They were watching him closely, each face filled with a mixture of concern, curiosity, and trust. Shikamaru, ever the realist, leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant as he seemed to weigh the implications of what Naruto had just revealed. Naruto, we've seen you take on the impossible before, Shikamaru said, his voice even. But this is different. Time itself? That's not something you can just control without consequences. You said it yourself. Naruto met his eyes. A faint smile tugging at his lips. I know, Shikamaru. I don't have all the answers. But I'm going to do everything I can to make sure no one has to suffer. Not on my watch. Sakura stepped forward. Her expression gentle yet determined. Naruto, you've always had that drive. That's why we believe in you. But you can't carry this burden alone. Let us help you. Whatever happens, we'll be here. Her words were like a lifeline, pulling him back from the abyss of doubt that had begun to form in his mind. He hadn't realized just how much he had been carrying, how much of his own fears and uncertainties had been left unsaid. But now, standing before his friends, he realized the truth. He was never truly alone. The future may have been in his hands, but it was a future they would all shape together. Naruto nodded, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. If only slightly. I won't forget that. I'll need you all more than ever. There was a pause, and then Kakashi, who had been silent for most of the conversation, stepped forward, his calm gaze fixed on Naruto. Naruto, I don't doubt your resolve. But remember, time is a dangerous thing to meddle with. You've seen the consequences of altering the past, of trying to change what's already happened. There's a balance that must be maintained. Naruto's eyes met Kakashi's, the unspoken understanding between them deepening. I know, Kakashi. I won't lose sight of that. I'm not trying to change everything. I'm just trying to protect what matters most, our future. Kakashi's gaze softened, and he nodded, his usual laid-back demeanor giving way to something deeper, something more reassuring. Then I trust you. Just don't forget that we're all in this together. With those words, the tension in the room began to ease. Shikamaru chuckled softly, shaking his head. If Naruto's got this, I'm not going to argue. But I'll be keeping a close eye on you, just in case you get any funny ideas. Naruto grinned at his friend. You're always a pain. You know that? Sakura joined in with a laugh, her usual warmth filling the room. You're not the only one who's worried about him, Shikamaru. As laughter echoed through the Hokage office, Naruto felt a strange sense of clarity settle over him. The weight of his responsibility, the immense power at his disposal, felt lighter somehow. His friends, his allies, had always been the anchors that kept him grounded. Even now, they were there, supporting him, reminding him that he wasn't alone in this. But deep down, Naruto knew that this peace was fragile. Time was not something to be trifled with, and the future he sought to protect was full of uncertainty. He had been given this power for a reason, and he would do whatever it took to make sure it wasn't abused. But the path forward was shrouded in mystery. What would happen if he changed too much? Could he truly safeguard the future without losing himself in the process? As the night wore on and the conversations around him continued, Naruto stepped outside, the cool night air washing over him. He gazed at the moon hanging high above, a silent witness to the ever-turning wheel of time. He felt its pull, its quiet hum beneath the surface of reality. It was a sound only he could hear now, like a distant heartbeat. Time was alive, it seemed, and it was waiting for him to make his next move. A voice broke through his thoughts, soft and familiar. Naruto. He turned to see Hinata standing in the doorway, her eyes filled with concern. Despite everything that had happened, her presence always had a calming effect on him. She stepped forward, her gaze never leaving his. Are you okay? She asked, her voice gentle but filled with a strength he had always admired. Naruto smiled, his heart warming at the sight of her. Yeah. Just thinking about everything. It's a lot to take in. Hinata stepped closer, her hand brushing against his. You don't have to carry it all by yourself. You've always had us. I believe in you. Naruto. His eyes softened as he looked into hers. Her words, her belief, gave him the strength to keep moving forward. No matter how much power he wielded, no matter how many lives depended on his choices, he had her, and that meant more than anything. Thanks, Hinata, he said, his voice low but filled with sincerity. I won't forget that. They stood together in the quiet of the night, the village of Konaha stretching out before them. Naruto had come so far. And yet, the true challenge was only just beginning. The future was in his hands, and he would guard it with everything he had. But in that moment, as the stars glimmered above, he knew one thing for certain. No matter what happened, he would never face it alone. And so, the journey of a new era began. The quiet night air seemed to settle over Konoha like a blanket, its stillness only broken by the faint rustling of leaves in the trees. Naruto stood alongside Hinata, their hands intertwined, a silent promise between them. As much as the village felt safe and calm, Naruto knew that this peace was fragile, like the thin thread of a spider's web that could snap at any moment. And in the distance, beyond the borders of Konoha, trouble was always lurking. "I'm still getting used to this," Naruto murmured, his gaze sweeping over the village. "I've never had this much responsibility before. There's so much to think about. So much to protect." Hinata's grip tightened on his hand, and she smiled softly, her eyes filled with warmth. "You've always carried the weight of the world, Naruto. It's just that now you have the power to make sure that weight doesn't crush you. But remember, you don't have to carry it alone." Naruto glanced at her, seeing the quiet strength in her expression, and for a moment, the worries and doubts that had been gnawing at him seemed to fade away. She was right. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. "I won't forget that," Naruto said with a genuine smile, his voice steady. "No matter what comes, I know I have you, my friends, and the people of this village by my side. And together, we can face anything." Hinata nodded, squeezing his hand. "And we'll be here, every step of the way." Just then, a low rumble of chakra swept through the air, a feeling Naruto was all too familiar with. His senses flared, and he immediately turned toward the source of the disturbance. It was faint, but unmistakable, something powerful, something unfamiliar, was approaching. "What's that?" Hinata asked, her eyes narrowing slightly as she also sensed the unusual presence. Naruto's instincts kicked into gear. It wasn't a threat yet, but the sensation was growing, spreading through the village like an ominous shadow. "I don't know, but I've got a feeling it's not just some passing disturbance. Stay close, Hinata." They began to move toward the village gates, their pace quickening as they headed toward the source of the strange energy. As they approached, they saw figures moving through the mist near the entrance to the village, cloaked in black and seemingly out of place in the peaceful Konoha night. "Who are they?" Hinata whispered, her Byakugan activated as she scanned the area, her sharp eyes locking onto the figures in the distance. "They're not familiar," Naruto said, his voice low and focused. "I can feel their chakra, but it's different. Something's off about them." As they closed the distance, the figures revealed themselves to be none other than members of an unfamiliar organization, clad in black robes and with their faces obscured by masks. They were unlike anything Naruto had encountered before. There was something ominous in the air, a sense of foreboding that seemed to emanate from them like a dark cloud. The leader, tall and imposing, stepped forward, his red eyes gleaming from beneath his mask. "You must be the new Hokage," he said in a smooth, deep voice. "Naruto Uzumaki. I've heard much about you." Naruto's heart skipped a beat. Something about the man's presence felt like a threat, like an ancient power that had been long forgotten, something he couldn't fully place, but something that sent a chill down his spine. "That's me," Naruto replied, standing tall. "Who are you? And what do you want?" The leader's lips curled into a thin smile, and he tilted his head slightly. "We are the Shadows of Eternity, an organization dedicated to reshaping the fabric of reality itself. We've been watching you, Naruto. Your powers are impressive, but we believe you can help us." The words hit Naruto like a slap in the face. Shadows of Eternity? An organization focused on reshaping reality? The very idea sent alarms ringing in his mind. He was no stranger to organizations with dangerous motives. But this felt different. Naruto's gaze hardened, and he stepped forward. "What do you mean? Help you? I don't help people like you." The leader's smile never faltered. "Oh, we're not just people, Naruto. We are more than that. We have the power to make you even greater than you already are." The question is, will you join us? Or will we have to force you? Naruto's pulse quickened, his body instinctively preparing for a fight. He wasn't about to let anyone, no matter how powerful, threaten Konaha. But before he could respond, Hinata's voice cut through the tension. Don't underestimate him, she warned, her Byakugan focused and alert. Naruto is not someone you can control. The leader chuckled softly, almost amused by her words. I think you'll find we're not so easily dismissed. But very well. We will allow you to make your choice, for now. Without another word, the group of masked figures began to fade into the mist, leaving Naruto and Hinata standing in the still night. Naruto's heart pounded in his chest as he watched them disappear into the shadows. He knew this wasn't the last time he would see them, and the sense of unease in his gut told him that their intentions were far from benign. Who were they? Hinata asked quietly, her voice laced with concern. I don't know, Naruto muttered, his mind racing. But whatever they want, it's not going to be good. I've got a bad feeling about this. Hinata placed a reassuring hand on his arm. We'll figure it out. Together. Naruto nodded, his resolve hardening. There was no time to waste. The shadows of eternity had come to Konaha, and whatever their plan was, it was up to him to stop it before it could unfold. Let's get back to the village, Naruto said, his tone resolute. We've got work to do. As they turned to head back toward the Hokage office, the weight of the situation began to settle in. It wasn't just about protecting the village anymore. The fabric of reality itself was being threatened, and Naruto knew that if he wasn't careful, everything he'd fought for could be torn apart. The night air felt colder now, and as he glanced up at the stars once more, Naruto knew the true test was just beginning. The shadows of eternity were out there, waiting, and it was only a matter of time before their intentions came to light. The streets of Konoha felt unnervingly silent as Naruto and Hinata walked back toward the Hokage tower, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. The village, so full of life just hours ago, now felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something inevitable to happen. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer than it should. Every whisper of wind felt charged with unseen tension. Naruto's mind churned with the strange encounter. The shadows of eternity. He hadn't heard of them before, but their presence left a deep, gnawing feeling in his gut. What were they after? And why him? You okay? Hinata asked, her voice breaking through his thoughts. She had been walking beside him quietly, her concern palpable. Naruto looked at her, offering a small, reassuring smile. Yeah, just thinking. It doesn't make sense. They knew too much about me. About the power I have. What do they want with me? Hinata. Hinata hesitated for a moment, her gaze distant as she processed everything they'd just witnessed. I don't know, Naruto. But I believe you're strong enough to handle whatever comes next. Naruto's smile faded slightly, replaced by a more serious expression. I hope so. This feels bigger than anything we've dealt with before. By the time they reached the Hokage tower, the weight of the situation had settled fully on Naruto's shoulders. Inside the tower, the atmosphere was different, darker, heavier, as if the very walls could sense the change. The room where the Hokage meetings were usually held was quiet, everyone waiting for him. The familiar faces of his friends, Sakura, Kakashi, Shikamaru, and others, were gathered around the table, their expressions a mix of concern and anticipation. Naruto. You're back, Kakashi greeted with his usual calm demeanor, though there was a flicker of worry in his eye. What happened? Naruto took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. The encounter with the shadows of eternity had shaken him, but he couldn't afford to show any weakness now. Not in front of his comrades. They're an organization called the Shadows of Eternity. Naruto began, recounting the encounter in as much detail as he could remember. They're powerful, and they seem to know about my abilities, about the powers I have at my disposal. They tried to recruit me, or maybe force me into something. But they made it clear that they're willing to do whatever it takes to get me on their side. The room was silent for a moment as everyone processed this information. Sakura was the first to speak, her expression serious. Do you think they'll come back? They seem dangerous. Naruto nodded. I don't know, but I can't afford to take chances. If they're after my power, I need to be ready for whatever they might throw at us." Shikamaru sighed, rubbing his temples. "Great. Just what we needed. Another shadowy organization bent on tearing up the world. But I'm with you, Naruto. We'll back you up. Whatever it takes." Kakashi, ever the strategist, leaned forward. "Naruto, I understand the gravity of the situation. But you need to be careful. If they really know about your abilities, then they might also know the dangers of trying to control such power. Their motives may not be what they seem." Naruto's gaze hardened, his resolve strengthening. "I'm not going to let them get away with it. I don't care what their plans are. I'll stop them before they can hurt anyone." Hinata stood beside him, her presence a silent support, as she always was. "We'll face this together. You don't have to fight alone." Naruto gave her a quick glance, his heart warmed by her unwavering trust. But there was something else gnawing at him, a fear he had not yet voiced. He had seen the consequences of using his powers recklessly in the past. But now, with the reality-bending abilities he had gained, what would happen if he lost control? What if the shadows wanted to push him beyond his limits? "We need to figure out what they want, what they plan to do with the power they're after," Naruto said, his voice low but firm. "I'll have to find out more about them before they can make their next move." Kakashi nodded thoughtfully. "The first step is information. If we can get any intel on this group, we might be able to anticipate their next move. But be careful, Naruto. These aren't the kind of enemies we're used to. If they have the power to manipulate reality itself, we're in for something much worse than any mission we've faced before." Shikamaru's brow furrowed. "We'll need all the help we can get. I'll start contacting some of our old allies. If this group is as dangerous as you say, it'll take more than just us to fight them off." As the meeting continued, Naruto's mind was far from the discussion. His thoughts drifted back to the enigmatic leader of the Shadows of Eternity. There was something about him, something older, something darker, that unsettled Naruto in a way he couldn't explain. He felt as though the leader had seen something within him, something that he had yet to fully understand. He had learned to trust his instincts. And right now, they were screaming at him. The Shadows of Eternity were not just a threat to Konaha. They were a threat to everything he had worked for, to the very fabric of the reality he had sworn to protect. Later that evening, Naruto found himself alone in his office, his thoughts racing. The weight of the situation was heavier now. He had always been the one to take charge, to leap into action without hesitation. But this was different. He couldn't afford to make mistakes this time. The consequences could be catastrophic. He closed his eyes, and for a brief moment, he allowed himself to reflect on the strange, godlike powers he had acquired. Time manipulation, reality-bending abilities. Could he use them to undo the damage the Shadows of Eternity might cause? Or would he, in his attempts to stop them, become just as dangerous as the enemies he was fighting? The crackling of chakra brought him out of his reverie. He opened his eyes and saw a faint figure standing in the doorway. It was Hinata, her eyes soft with concern, but also filled with understanding. "Naruto," she said quietly, stepping into the room. "You don't have to carry all of this by yourself. We're here for you." Naruto felt the weight on his chest lighten just a little. Hinata's words always had a way of grounding him, reminding him that no matter how powerful he became, he was still human, and he still needed the people he cared about. "I know," he replied softly, standing up from his desk. "I'll be all right. I just need to figure this out. The future depends on it." Hinata smiled, walking over to his side and standing there silently with him as they both looked out at the moonlit village. The night was peaceful, but Naruto knew better than anyone that peace could be shattered in an instant. And now, with the Shadows of Eternity lurking in the darkness, that peace was more fragile than ever. But no matter what happened, Naruto was determined to protect everything he held dear. The battle was just beginning, and he would be ready. The moonlight cast long shadows across the village as Naruto and Hinata stood together in the Hokage tower, the quiet tension between them palpable. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the night breeze, the distant rustling of leaves, and the soft hum of chakra in the air. But even in the calm, Naruto's mind was racing. His instincts told him that something catastrophic was coming. And he couldn't shake the feeling that it had something to do with the Shadows of Eternity. They weren't just a rogue organization. They were a force of nature. A cosmic presence. And perhaps far more than even he could comprehend. "We need to make sure everyone is ready," Naruto said. His voice firm. "I don't know what these Shadows of Eternity want. But if they're after my power, I'll make sure they regret it." Hinata turned to him. Her expression gentle but serious. "You're not alone in this, Naruto. We'll figure this out together." Naruto nodded, grateful for her unwavering support. He couldn't imagine facing this without her by his side. Still, there was an uncomfortable feeling deep within him. A sense that the power he wielded might not be enough to stop the coming storm. The next few days were a blur of preparations. Naruto called together his most trusted allies, Sakura, Kakashi, Shikamaru, and others, to devise a plan. The information they had on the Shadows of Eternity was minimal. But the little they did know was disturbing. This organization wasn't just seeking power. They seemed to have an intimate knowledge of how to manipulate the very fabric of reality. "Naruto," Kakashi said, his voice thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what you said. These Shadows of Eternity. They might be more than just a group of rogue shinobi. If they truly understand the power of manipulating reality, we could be facing something on a level we've never encountered before. We need to approach this carefully." Sakura, who had been monitoring the village's defenses, added, "I agree. If they can control reality itself, there's no telling what they might do to disrupt the balance of things. We might need outside help." Naruto glanced at Hinata, who stood beside him, her Byakugan always alert, scanning the area for any signs of disturbance. "What do you think, Hinata?" Hinata's eyes softened as she met his gaze. "I believe that whatever comes, we will face it as a team. But we must be vigilant, Naruto. The Shadows of Eternity are not just after you. They might want to reshape everything we hold dear." Naruto's heart sank at her words. He knew she was right. This was no longer just about protecting the village. The fate of the entire world could be at stake. He clenched his fists, the weight of the responsibility settling deeper within him. "We need more information," Naruto said, his voice resolute. "I'm going to find out everything I can about them. And I won't stop until we know exactly what they're planning." Over the next few days, Naruto, Sakura, and Shikamaru worked tirelessly, gathering every shred of information they could find. They searched through old mission reports, talked to retired ninja, and even consulted with scholars and sages who might know something about ancient organizations with the power to bend reality. But all of their efforts seemed to lead to dead ends. It was late one evening when they finally got a breakthrough. A retired shinobi named Jiro, who had spent his younger years investigating rogue groups and secret organizations, contacted them with a cryptic message. "I know who they are," Jiro said when they met him in a hidden location deep within the village. "The Shadows of Eternity. They were thought to be a myth, a story told among the old clans. But I've seen their symbol before, etched into the walls of an ancient temple, buried beneath the hidden stone village. The truth is, these shadows are not from this world." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, not from this world?" Jiro took a long breath before answering. "The Shadows of Eternity are remnants of an ancient, cosmic force. Beings who exist outside of the normal flow of time and space. Their purpose is to manipulate and shape reality itself, as if they were the architects of the world. But their true goal is not to rule. It is far more dangerous. They seek to rewrite the very nature of existence." Sakura's voice was filled with disbelief. "You mean they want to change everything? Reality itself?" "Yes," Jiro replied grimly. "They are not just after power. They are after control. The power to reshape the world to their will. To erase the very foundation upon which everything stands. And Naruto, you're the key to their plans." Naruto felt a chill run down his spine. "Me? Why me?" Jiro's eyes darkened. "Because of what you've become. The power you've unlocked. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before. You have the ability to alter reality. Just as they do. You're the one they need to complete their goal." The weight of his words hit Naruto like a sledgehammer. He had always known he was different. That the abilities he had unlocked weren't just simple chakra techniques. But to think that his powers could be the key to something so catastrophic. Something so dangerous was almost too much to bear. Hinata stepped forward, her presence a steadying force. Naruto, we'll find a way to stop them. You're not alone in this. We'll fight together. No matter what. Naruto turned to her, his heart swelling with gratitude. He knew that with her by his side, he could face anything. But the battle ahead would be unlike any they had ever fought. If the shadows of eternity were truly after his power to reshape reality, then everything he had fought for, the peace he had brought to the world, the bonds he had forged, could be at risk. We have to stop them before they can get to me, Naruto said, his voice low but filled with determination. I won't let them destroy everything. Jiro nodded gravely. It won't be easy. They've been planning this for centuries. And they won't give up easily. But if you stand against them, there's a chance we can still win. The team gathered their plans, the stakes higher than ever. The shadows of eternity were coming for Naruto, and he couldn't afford to wait. His destiny had been set, and he had no choice but to embrace the power he had gained and use it to protect the world. In the days that followed, Naruto trained harder than ever before. He had to understand the full extent of his abilities. Time manipulation, reality bending, he couldn't allow himself to be caught off guard. He spent hours in seclusion, practicing his techniques, pushing himself beyond his limits. But despite his relentless training, a deep fear lingered in the back of his mind. What if, in trying to protect everything, he became the very thing he feared? What if his power overwhelmed him, like it had done in the past? And as he trained, the shadows grew closer. The days passed in a blur, the weight of the impending battle heavy on Naruto's mind. His training intensified, his mastery over his powers growing with each passing hour. But no matter how much he pushed himself, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The sense that he was being drawn into a trap, a web too intricate to fully understand, lingered like a shadow over his thoughts. The very powers he had unlocked, the ability to bend reality, manipulate time, felt like a double-edged sword. Could he truly control them? Or was he slowly becoming a puppet to forces he couldn't yet comprehend? Hinata had noticed the change in him. She always did. Her presence was a constant reminder of what he was fighting for. One evening, as Naruto stood alone on the roof of the Hokage tower, gazing at the village below, she quietly approached him. Her soft footsteps the only sound on the silent night. Naruto, she said gently, standing beside him, her voice a soothing balm against the storm brewing in his heart. Naruto turned to her, offering a tired smile, though his eyes betrayed the weight he carried. Hinata. I don't know if I can do this. The shadows of eternity. They want more than just me. They want everything. Hinata's eyes softened, and she reached out, her hand lightly touching his arm. But you're not alone. You never have been. We've always faced things together. And this will be no different. Naruto stared at her for a long moment, his heart aching with gratitude. I don't deserve you, Hinata. She smiled faintly, shaking her head. You do, Naruto. You've fought for everyone, even when it seemed like there was no hope left. That's why I believe in you. Naruto took a deep breath, her words grounding him in the chaos swirling inside him. Thank you, Hinata. I'll protect you. And everyone else. Even if it means giving everything I have. The silence between them stretched on for a moment, but it was a comfortable silence. One filled with mutual understanding. Then, Naruto's gaze shifted to the horizon, the faintest flicker of something dark crossing his features. They're coming, he said quietly, his voice tinged with a grim certainty. The shadows of eternity. I can feel them. They've already begun their move. Hinata stiffened, her Byakugan activated, scanning the village's surroundings. Where are they? What do you sense? Naruto's expression darkened. I don't know exactly. But their presence is like a shadow over everything. They're watching, waiting for the right moment. As if on cue. The ground beneath their feet trembled, faint at first, then growing stronger. A crackling, unnatural energy filled the air, sending shivers down Naruto's spine. It was the unmistakable feeling of chakra. But not just any chakra. This was something darker, more potent, something that didn't belong in the world. They're here, Naruto said, his voice low and filled with resolve. "We need to warn everyone. Now." Without another word, Naruto and Hinata rushed toward the village center. As they moved through the streets, the air grew heavier, and the familiar sounds of the village began to fade, replaced by an eerie stillness. It felt as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. By the time they reached the center of the village, Naruto found his friends already gathered: Kakashi, Sakura, Shikamaru, and the rest of the elite shinobi, each one standing tense, alert, as if waiting for the storm to break. "We've confirmed it," Kakashi said. His Sharingan activated as he scanned the area. "Something is definitely wrong. The chakra signatures are off. It's not like anything we've ever sensed before." Naruto's eyes hardened as he stepped forward. "The shadows of eternity. They've arrived. And they're after me." The group fell silent as the realization settled in. They had all heard about the organization, but hearing it confirmed brought a new sense of urgency. Shikamaru rubbed his forehead, trying to keep his composure. "So, what's the plan, Naruto? We don't have much time before they make their move." Naruto glanced at his friends, their expressions filled with determination. "We fight. We don't let them take anything from us." But just as he finished speaking, a figure appeared before them, a tall, imposing man cloaked in dark robes, his presence sending a chill through the air. His eyes gleamed with an unnatural, almost otherworldly light. He wore a smile that didn't reach his eyes, his voice calm yet carrying an edge of cold authority. "So, you're the one they've been speaking of," the man said, his voice smooth, like velvet over steel. "Naruto Uzumaki, the wielder of the power to shape reality itself. The one who can control time, space, and the very essence of existence. We've been waiting for you." Naruto stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Who are you? What do you want with me?" The man's smile widened, his gaze unwavering. "I am the harbinger of eternity, the one who will see your powers fully realized. You're the key to our grand design. We've been watching you, Naruto Uzumaki. We know what you are capable of. And now, it's time for you to fulfill your destiny." Sakura's eyes narrowed. "What grand design? What are you talking about?" The harbinger raised a hand, and suddenly, the very ground beneath their feet began to warp and twist, the landscape shifting as if it were made of clay. Buildings crumbled, trees bent and twisted unnaturally, and the sky itself seemed to crack as reality bent to the harbinger's will. "This world, this existence, is but a canvas," the harbinger continued, his voice now laced with malice. "And I, along with the shadows of eternity, will reshape it in our image. All you have ever known, all you have ever fought for, will be wiped away. And in its place, a new world will rise, one where we reign supreme." Naruto's heart pounded as he felt the power radiating from the man in front of him. This wasn't just an ordinary opponent. This was a being who had the power to rewrite reality itself. And Naruto knew, deep down, that if he didn't act fast, the entire world would be plunged into chaos. "We'll see about that," Naruto said, his voice steely with resolve. The air around him crackled with energy as he tapped into his vast reserves of chakra. But even as he prepared for battle, a nagging fear lingered in the back of his mind. Could he stop them? Could his powers, even with everything he had learned, be enough to stop the harbinger and the shadows of eternity? Or was this the moment where everything he had fought for would come crashing down? As the harbinger's smile deepened, the answer seemed clear. The war for reality had only just begun. The air shimmered around them, the very fabric of reality warping in response to the harbinger's will. The landscape twisted, shifting as though the laws of nature were being rewritten before their eyes. The ground cracked open in jagged lines, and the sky above darkened with swirling clouds. The once stable world now a chaotic reflection of the harbinger's immense power. Naruto stood tall, his eyes burning with determination. The fear that had gnawed at him earlier, the uncertainty about his own abilities, was gone. In its place, the unwavering resolve that had carried him through countless battles surged within him. He wouldn't let this man, this force of destruction, reshape everything he held dear. Hinata stepped beside him, her Byakugan flaring to life, her stance defensive but ready. She could sense the immense chakra flooding from the Harbinger. But she knew they weren't alone. They had the strength of their bonds. And that would be their greatest weapon. Naruto, Hinata said softly. Her voice steady. You don't have to carry this burden alone. Naruto nodded. But his focus never wavered. I know, Hinata. But this time, we need to end it before it gets worse. The Harbinger, sensing the resolve in Naruto's eyes, smirked, his voice dripping with contempt. Foolish. You think you can stand against the eternal tide of existence? You've barely scratched the surface of your true power. And already, you presume to challenge me? The air crackled as the Harbinger raised his hand, a dark energy gathering around it, spiraling and coalescing into a ball of swirling blackness. Witness the power to bend the fabric of reality itself. He boomed, his voice echoing across the warping landscape. With a sudden flick of his wrist, the sphere shot forward, expanding in size as it rushed toward them. Naruto didn't hesitate. In an instant, he activated his own chakra, drawing from every well of power he had at his disposal. Let's go, Kurama, he whispered, and the familiar, mighty presence of the nine tails surged through him. The red chakra enveloped Naruto, amplifying his already godlike abilities. Time seemed to slow, but Naruto's mind sharpened, and his senses heightened to their peak. The Harbinger's attack, though immense, no longer seemed as overwhelming as before. Leave this to me, Naruto shouted, his voice amplified by the sheer force of his power. He leapt forward with incredible speed, his Rasengan forming in his hand as he charged directly at the black sphere of destruction. The ground beneath him cracked and shattered as he propelled himself forward with a burst of pure energy. The Harbinger's smile faltered for just a moment, sensing the tremendous force Naruto was bringing with him. But then, his eyes gleamed with cold amusement. You still don't understand, do you? The Harbinger extended both arms, and the sphere of darkness expanded, consuming everything in its path. But Naruto, undeterred, slammed the Rasengan into the sphere, causing it to destabilize. The clash of their powers sent a shockwave that rippled through the twisted reality, warping the world around them even more. Naruto's Rasengan struggled to overpower the darkness, but his sheer will and determination started to push through. I understand more than you think, Naruto shouted, the energy in his hand intensifying. I fought for this world my whole life. I've never backed down. And I'm not starting now. With a final roar, Naruto thrust the Rasengan forward with all his might, shattering the sphere of darkness into thousands of fragments. The dark energy exploded outward, creating a shockwave that threw the nearby buildings into the air. But Naruto didn't stop. He used the momentum of his attack to rush forward, closing the distance between him and the Harbinger in a split second. How? How is this possible? The Harbinger's voice faltered, his calm facade cracking as he attempted to generate more power. But Naruto's relentless assault was too much. His punches, powered by the Nine Tails chakra, landed with devastating force, each blow resonating through the air like thunder. The Harbinger staggered back, clearly taken aback by Naruto's ferocity. He hadn't anticipated this level of strength. His dark aura flickered, but before he could react, Naruto landed a final punch that sent the Harbinger flying backward, his body crashing into the fractured earth. Sakura, Shikamaru, and the others, having taken cover from the initial blast, now joined the fray, surrounding the Harbinger, ready to capitalize on Naruto's moment of triumph. But the battle wasn't over. Not yet. You? The Harbinger's voice was weak, but there was a dangerous glint in his eyes. You think you've won? You don't even understand what you've done. Naruto's brow furrowed as he looked down at the fallen figure. I know exactly what I've done. I stopped you from destroying everything. And I'll do it again if I have to. The Harbinger slowly rose to his feet, his body crackling with dark energy. Fool! You've shattered a small part of my plan. But you have no idea of the forces you've just unleashed. You've tapped into power far greater than you realize, greater than I can even control. Naruto's heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? The Harbinger's smile returned, though it was filled with malice. You've awakened something far older and more powerful than you could possibly imagine. The Shadows of Eternity are not a mere organization. They are a manifestation of the very chaos that governs the universe. You are but a pawn in a game far greater than you can fathom." Before Naruto could respond, the ground trembled again. But this time, it wasn't just a ripple. The earth itself began to crack and break, enormous rifts opening across the village. The skies twisted into unnatural patterns, and a cold wind began to blow through the village. Naruto's eyes widened as a dark, cosmic energy began to emerge from the cracks. From the depths of these rifts, enormous beings began to appear. Figures that seemed to defy the laws of reality, their very existence warping the space around them. "These are the true shadows of eternity," the Harbinger said, his voice now a mere whisper. "And now, you will see the true extent of their power." Naruto felt a deep sense of foreboding. He had only fought a fraction of the power the Harbinger commanded. But now, as the rifts expanded and the monstrous beings stepped forward, he realized that the battle was far from over. "We need to hold them off," Naruto said, turning to his friends. "Now more than ever, we need to work together. This is only the beginning." But deep down, a part of him couldn't help but wonder. Could they really defeat these beings? Was the power he had gained truly enough to stop the shadows of eternity from reshaping everything? The first of the monstrous beings let out a roar that echoed through the village, its eyes glowing with the same dark energy that filled the Harbinger's aura. And with that, the real battle began. The roar of the monstrous being reverberated through the entire village, sending tremors underfoot as it loomed over Naruto and his comrades. Its form was a grotesque distortion of reality itself, shifting, growing, and changing, as though it were born from the very chaos that threatened to swallow the world. The air around it crackled with raw, dark energy that distorted the space around it. It felt like the very laws of nature were being warped. Naruto's heart raced, but his resolve only hardened. This was no ordinary enemy, no mere clash of chakra. The shadows of eternity were bringing something far darker, something that transcended the bounds of reality itself. The battle that lay ahead would push every one of them to their limits, and beyond. "We need to take it down, now," Naruto shouted, his voice filled with urgency. Hinata, her Byakugan scanning the enemy, stepped forward. "There are more coming from the rifts. This isn't just one enemy. It's an entire invasion." Shikamaru, ever the strategist, assessed the situation with a calmness that belied the chaos around them. "We can't let them spread across the village. We need to contain them, cut off their numbers as quickly as possible." The massive being in front of them was now fully formed, towering over them with tendrils of dark energy reaching into the sky. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its every movement seemed to distort the very air around it. The creature's massive claws swiped through the air, causing ripples in reality that sent waves of energy crashing through the ground. "Get ready," Naruto said, his chakra rising to its peak, enveloping him in the familiar crimson aura of the Nine Tails. The ground under his feet shattered as he bolted forward, his speed blurring the world around him. He slammed into the creature with a powerful Rasengan, the energy sphere exploding upon impact, sending shockwaves through the area. The creature staggered but did not fall. "Is that all you have, little mortal?" the creature hissed, its voice a combination of multiple dissonant sounds, as though it was speaking from every corner of the universe at once. Naruto gritted his teeth. Nope, that was just the beginning. Before he could strike again, a crackling beam of dark energy shot from the creature's chest, hurtling toward him at an unimaginable speed. With a shout, Naruto leapt to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast, which obliterated a chunk of the ground where he had been standing. The explosion sent a gust of wind through the area, knocking some of the nearby buildings off their foundations. Sakura moved swiftly to Naruto's side, her medical ninjutsu already readying itself for any injuries. "Be careful, Naruto," she called out, her hands glowing with green chakra as she prepared to heal any damage he might take. "That thing's power is unlike anything we've faced before." Naruto nodded, his mind racing. He could feel the immense energy of the creature, and it was only growing stronger. It wasn't just its size or raw power. It was the way the creature twisted reality itself. Every attack was more than just a physical strike. It was an assault on the very laws of nature. "Everyone, stay sharp," Naruto shouted, We can't let them take control. We need to hit them hard. And fast. The others sprang into action. Shikamaru formed a series of shadow clones and used his shadow possession jutsu to try and restrain the creature's limbs. It was a temporary measure, but enough to buy time for the others. In response, the creature let out a horrific screech, its claws tearing through the shadow tendrils as if they were nothing. But it had been delayed. If only for a moment. Sasuke. Now. Naruto yelled. Sasuke, who had been quietly observing, his Sharingan activated, flashed into action. In the blink of an eye, he appeared behind the creature, his Chidori sparking with devastating energy. The lightning-charged blade struck the creature's massive form, causing it to stagger. But the damage was minimal. Its dark aura was too strong to be pierced so easily. Damn it. It's not enough, Sasuke muttered, backing away as the creature retaliated with a lash of its tail. Shikamaru cursed under his breath. It's adapting. Its defenses are evolving in real time. Naruto narrowed his eyes. We need a plan. Now. This isn't just a fight. It's a war for the fate of this world. Just as he was about to strategize, another roar erupted from the depths of the rift, and more figures began to emerge. They were smaller than the massive creature before them, but they were no less dangerous. These new beings seemed to flicker in and out of existence, their forms not quite stable, like shadows that could never fully be touched. We're outnumbered, Sakura said, her voice tight with anxiety. How are we supposed to fight all of them at once? But Naruto's eyes, now glowing with an inner fire, met hers. We don't need to fight them all. We just need to end this. Now. With a burst of power, Naruto drew upon everything he had. His own chakra, the Nine Tails energy, and the overwhelming power of the stand that had awakened within him. The swirling energies around him flared as he focused them into a single, concentrated point in his palm. The air seemed to vibrate as he held his hand out. A deep, rumbling voice emanating from the core of his being. I call upon the very laws of existence itself. Let the true power of time and space be mine to control. The energy coalesced, creating a massive, swirling sphere of light and dark, a manifestation of Naruto's ability to control both his physical strength and the very essence of reality itself. It was a technique unlike any other, a fusion of every force he had ever mastered, and it was more powerful than anything the world had ever seen. I'm going to end this, Naruto roared, launching the sphere of energy directly at the first monstrous creature. As it flew toward its target, the very world seemed to bend and twist around the sphere, time itself slowing and warping as reality buckled under the sheer force of Naruto's attack. The creature's eyes widened in realization. But it was too late. The sphere struck, and everything around it was consumed in a violent explosion of light and darkness, the shockwave rippling outward in all directions. The force of the blast tore through the surrounding area, disintegrating everything in its path. The twisted reality around them shattered like glass, and for a brief, glorious moment, it felt as though the very fabric of the universe had been restored to its natural state. But even as the smoke cleared and the immense creature lay defeated, Naruto knew that this victory was only temporary. The shadows of eternity were not so easily destroyed. They were infinite, existing beyond the confines of time and space. That's just the beginning, Naruto muttered to himself, his expression hardening as he turned toward the rift. More enemies already emerging. The battle for the future of the world was far from over. And Naruto knew that if he wanted to save everything he loved, he would have to fight not just with his strength, but with the full extent of the power that he had only just begun to understand. The rift continued to tear open the sky, an unending stream of shadowy figures emerging from the chaos within. Each one was more monstrous and distorted than the last, their very presence warping reality around them. Naruto could feel their malice, their intent to destroy everything he held dear. The world itself seemed to be crumbling, as if it were being slowly eaten away by the shadows of eternity. Naruto clenched his fists, his body still brimming with energy from his previous attack. But he knew it wouldn't be enough. This wasn't just about fighting. They were battling against the very laws of existence itself. These creatures were the embodiment of chaos, manifestations of an ancient force that transcended time, space, and even the concept of reality. But Naruto wasn't one to back down. no matter how overwhelming the odds. He turned to his comrades, who were preparing for the battle ahead. Sasuke, his Sharingan glowing brightly, was already focusing his chakra, preparing for another assault. Sakura, her hands glowing with healing energy, was standing by, ready to assist whenever the team needed her. Shikamaru's mind was already calculating the best strategies to deal with the oncoming wave of enemies, while Hinata's Byakugan was scanning the battlefield, identifying weak points and enemy movements. "We can't hold back anymore," Naruto said, his voice calm but laced with determination. "If we're going to stop this, we need to work together and hit them with everything we've got." Shikamaru nodded. "You're right. The more we let them spread out, the harder it will be to contain them. We need to strike fast, strike hard." Sasuke stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "Let me deal with the biggest threats. I can use my Chidori to cut through their defenses. Then I'll cover the others," Naruto said. "I'll take down as many as I can. No one gets left behind." Hinata, her Byakugan still active, placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "Be careful, Naruto. These enemies are different from anything we've faced before. They don't just have strength, they can manipulate reality itself." Naruto looked at her, giving her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Hinata. I've got this." With that, Naruto raised his hand, and the familiar crimson chakra of Kurama surged around him. The Nine Tails power flooded him, augmenting his strength to godlike levels. But this time, it wasn't just the raw power of Kurama. He could feel the energy of his stand, Nine Realms King, resonating within him as well, amplifying his senses, his abilities, and his control over time and space. His connection to the very fabric of reality felt more intense than ever before. In a flash, Naruto was on the move, his body a blur as he raced toward the nearest rift. The creatures that poured out of it were like nothing he had seen before, horrifying, eldritch beings that defied the natural order. Some resembled twisted versions of animals. Others were humanoid but with grotesque features, while others seemed to be formless shadows, constantly shifting and changing as if they were never meant to exist in the first place. Without hesitation, Naruto activated the full power of his stand. The ground beneath his feet trembled, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to slow around him. He could feel time itself bending to his will. He raised his hand, and in an instant, the world around him warped as he manipulated the flow of time to accelerate his movements. His strikes were faster than the eye could follow, each punch landing with devastating force, tearing through the twisted creatures in an explosion of energy. The shadows of eternity recoiled, some disintegrating upon contact with his attacks, others disbanding into thin air before reappearing in another part of the battlefield. The sheer scale of the creature's power was unimaginable, but Naruto's resolve was unwavering. Every blow he landed was an affirmation that he wouldn't let them win, that he wouldn't let these creatures reshape the world he had fought so hard to protect. However, as the last of the nearest creatures disintegrated into nothingness, Naruto felt a shift. The rifts began to grow larger, and more monsters emerged, their numbers exponentially increasing. This wasn't just an invasion, it was a tidal wave of destruction, a force too powerful for a single person, or even a single team, to handle. Sasuke, who had been clearing his own path through the monstrous horde, appeared beside Naruto. "We're running out of time. We need to shut down the rifts. If we don't, this world won't survive." Naruto nodded, his mind racing. "I can't do it alone. We need to disrupt the source of the rifts. We need to find the heart of their power." Sasuke's eyes flashed with realization. The Harbinger. He must be the one opening these rifts. If we take him down, we can stop the invasion. Naruto's eyes hardened. Then we'll end this, once and for all. But just as they were about to move toward the heart of the rift, the ground beneath them cracked open, and from the depths, a new figure emerged. It was the Harbinger, his dark energy pulsing and swirling around him like a storm. His eyes glowed with malevolent power, and his body was surrounded by a sphere of pure blackness, warping reality with every step he took. "You think you can defeat me?" The Harbinger's voice echoed through the battlefield, carrying a weight of finality. "I am not just a force of destruction. I am the embodiment of the chaos that governs the very fabric of existence." There is no stopping me. There never was. Naruto's fists clenched. He could feel the overwhelming power radiating from the Harbinger. But his own confidence remained unshaken. I don't care what you are. I faced worse than this. And I'm not stopping now. Sasuke joined him, his Sharingan glowing brightly. We'll stop you together. The Harbinger's laugh echoed, booming like thunder. You believe you can stand against me? The very nature of your existence is a mockery of reality. You're but fleeting specks of dust. And I am the storm that will erase you all. With a wave of his hand. The Harbinger sent a blast of dark energy toward them, splitting the earth in two. But Naruto's chakra flared to life once more. And with a single shout, he activated his stand. Time itself seemed to freeze as Naruto raced toward the Harbinger. The world around him slowed to a crawl. Before the Harbinger could react, Naruto closed the distance between them, landing a powerful punch that sent shockwaves through the air. The dark sphere around the Harbinger flickered. But the creature merely grinned. Is that all you've got, mortal? He taunted. Naruto's eyes narrowed, his chakra flaring. Not even close. He drew upon every ounce of power within him. Kurama's chakra, the energy of 9 realms king, and the will to protect his world, and unleashed a devastating attack. The blast of energy tore through the air, shattering the Harbinger's protective sphere and sending him hurtling backward. But even as the Harbinger stumbled, his eyes glowed with a terrible promise. You may have wounded me, but this world is already lost. The shadows of eternity will consume it. And nothing you do will change that. Naruto's voice was steady, his resolve unwavering. I've never been one to give up. And I'm not going to start now. The final battle had only just begun. The Harbinger's dark energy surged again, enveloping the battlefield in an oppressive atmosphere. As he staggered back from Naruto's devastating blow, the ground beneath him cracked and split open, releasing dark tendrils that writhed and slithered, tearing into the earth. The very sky above them seemed to darken further, swirling with ominous clouds that twisted like they were part of a grand cosmic machine. A machine meant to unravel the world itself. Naruto could feel the weight of the creature's presence, an overwhelming force that seemed to bend reality itself. But his determination was unshaken. The Harbinger was not invincible. He had already shown a crack in his defenses, and Naruto knew that if he could keep up the pressure, they might stand a chance. He glanced to Sasuke, who was already preparing another attack, his Sharingan focused and unblinking. We've got him on the ropes, Sasuke said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. But we need to end this fast. The longer we wait, the stronger his influence becomes. Naruto nodded, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the Harbinger. The dark energy radiating from the creature intensified, becoming a twisting maelstrom of shadows that threatened to tear everything apart. The Harbinger lifted one hand, and a wave of black energy shot forth, a massive destructive force that carved through the air with terrifying speed. Naruto acted instinctively, his body moving faster than the eye could see. His stand, 9 realms king, activated once again, freezing the flow of time around him. In that brief, frozen moment, Naruto appeared before the Harbinger, his Rasengan glowing brightly with an aura of concentrated energy. The power of the 9 tails combined with the reality-warping abilities of his stand created an attack that could pierce even the most unyielding defenses. The Harbinger's eyes widened in disbelief as Naruto thrust the Rasengan into his chest. The energy collided with the dark sphere of protection surrounding him, creating an enormous explosion of light and darkness. The sheer force of the impact sent shockwaves rippling across the land, knocking both Naruto and the Harbinger backward. But when the smoke cleared, the Harbinger was still standing, though his form was flickering, unstable. His body was covered in cracks, dark tendrils of energy leaking from the shattered defenses. He grinned, though the smile was twisted and filled with malice. You're stronger than I anticipated, the Harbinger said, his voice dripping with contempt. But it doesn't matter. You cannot stop the end. The rifts will continue to open, and this world will crumble beneath its own weight. Naruto's expression hardened. You're wrong. This world has too much to fight for. It's not yours to destroy. As the Harbinger raised his hand to strike back, Sasuke took the opportunity to act. His Sharingan pulsed with energy, and a large shadow clone of himself emerged from the ground. The clone, wielding the Chidori, dashed toward the Harbinger, lightning crackling around his hand. At the same time, Shikamaru, using his shadow possession jutsu, extended his shadow to bind the Harbinger's legs, limiting his mobility. The Harbinger, distracted by the clone's sudden attack, barely had time to react before Sasuke's Chidori pierced through the cracks in his defenses, striking him directly in the chest. The lightning-infused Chidori surged through the creature's body, destabilizing his energy further. "Impossible," the Harbinger hissed, his voice strained. You think this will stop me?" Naruto's eyes burned with determination. "It's already too late for you." With a yell, he charged forward, gathering all of his chakra into one massive, concentrated Rasengan. His stand, 9 Realms King, amplified the flow of time and space around him, warping reality as his power reached its peak. The Rasengan expanded, radiating energy that shook the air itself. Naruto's body flared with an aura of pure chakra, the power of both the 9 tails and his stand merging into one unstoppable force. "I'll end this, right now," Naruto roared, thrusting his hand forward with all the force he could muster. The Rasengan collided with the Harbinger's chest, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The Harbinger's body screamed as the concentrated energy tore through his form, unraveling his very essence. The dark energy surrounding him cracked like glass, and the creature's scream echoed through the battlefield as his existence began to collapse in on itself. Naruto stood firm, watching as the Harbinger disintegrated before him, his form fading into nothingness as the rifts began to close one by one. The dark energy that had once threatened to consume the world faded, the reality around them slowly returning to normal. Sasuke stepped forward, breathing heavily. "It's over." Naruto nodded, his gaze lingering on the spot where the Harbinger had been. "It's over. For now." The team gathered around Naruto, the air heavy with exhaustion. The battle had been long and grueling, but they had succeeded. The rifts were closing, and the invasion of the shadows of eternity had been stopped. The village, though damaged, was safe, for now. But Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that this victory was only temporary. The Harbinger had spoken of a greater plan, a larger force at work. He could sense that this was just one battle in a much bigger war. "Thanks for your help, everyone," Naruto said, his voice tired but filled with gratitude. "We couldn't have done it without you." Sakura smiled, though her expression was weary. "We're a team, and we'll always have each other's backs." Shikamaru, always the strategist, spoke up. "This isn't over. There's more going on here, and we need to be prepared. If the Harbinger was just one part of something bigger, we'll need to find out what that is." Naruto looked at his comrades, his eyes firm with resolve. "I'm not backing down. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." As the sun began to rise over the village, casting a warm light over the battlefield, Naruto couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. The world was still on the brink, and there were greater threats ahead. But he was ready to protect everything he held dear, no matter what came next. And no matter how powerful the enemy, he knew one thing for certain. He would never stop fighting. Not as long as he drew breath. As the dust began to settle and the rifts continued to close, Naruto stood there for a moment, his breathing slowing as the adrenaline finally wore off. The echoes of battle faded into the background, replaced by a heavy silence that seemed to hang over the battlefield. The threat of the Harbinger was gone, but the aftermath left a lingering sense of unease in the air. The sky, which had been torn asunder just moments before, was now slowly beginning to return to its natural state. The clouds parted, letting the sunlight break through and bathe the world in a golden hue. But for Naruto, the peace that followed the battle felt temporary, like the calm before a storm. He turned toward his friends, seeing their faces mirrored his own exhaustion. But there was a sense of quiet relief. Even Sasuke, whose sharp eyes were always scanning for the next threat, appeared slightly less tense than usual. His Sharingan faded as he let out a long breath, his posture easing. "We did it," Sakura said softly, her voice carrying a quiet pride. Her eyes, however, were filled with concern. "But what's next?" Naruto's gaze turned distant. That's the question, isn't it? He knew it wasn't over. The Harbinger had hinted at something bigger. A greater force pulling the strings behind the scenes. Even though they had stopped the invasion, it wasn't enough to ensure their world's safety. He could feel it deep within him. A gnawing certainty that this was only the beginning of a much darker journey. Shikamaru stepped forward, folding his arms as he observed the sky. He wasn't acting alone. There are still too many unknowns. And those rifts. He trailed off, his brow furrowing in thought. They're not natural. I've seen jutsu like that before. But they don't follow the usual rules of chakra manipulation. Sasuke looked at Shikamaru and then at Naruto. This wasn't some random invasion. Someone orchestrated this. And if they're capable of manipulating reality like the Harbinger was, then they have to be incredibly powerful. Naruto clenched his fists, his mind racing with possibilities. The Harbinger's words echoed in his mind. The shadows of eternity will consume it. And nothing you do will change that. The rifts, the destruction, it wasn't just about conquering the world. It was about unmaking it. Rewriting its very fabric. Whoever was behind this had the power to reshape the universe itself. Hinata, who had been silent until now, placed a hand on his shoulder. Her voice was soft but steady. Naruto, we'll face whatever comes next together. You don't have to carry this burden alone. Naruto smiled at her, grateful for her support. I know, Hinata. I know. But there was still a heavy weight on his chest. He couldn't shake the feeling that the forces at play were beyond even their understanding. The thought of fighting against a power that could manipulate reality itself, it was a daunting prospect. Sasuke, sensing Naruto's unease, spoke up, his voice more serious than usual. We need to get stronger. If we're going to face whatever this is head-on, we need to prepare. We can't keep relying on just brute force. Naruto nodded, the resolve returning to his eyes. Agreed. I've been pushing myself to the limit. But it's clear that this enemy won't be beaten by just one person. Or even one team. We need to unite everyone. If we want to win, we have to prepare like never before. Sakura's face lit up with determination. I'll continue training. There's always room for improvement. Shikamaru, ever the strategist, nodded thoughtfully. We'll need all the data we can gather. I'll keep working on figuring out the source of those rifts. We need to understand what we're up against before we go charging into battle again. Naruto turned his gaze back to the horizon, his mind already planning the next steps. But even as he focused on the future, part of him felt the weight of what was to come. The Harbinger had been a formidable opponent. But he was only a small piece of a larger puzzle. Whoever was behind these events, they were still out there. Watching. Waiting for the right moment to strike again. His eyes narrowed with determination. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. As the team began to regroup and head back toward the village, Naruto's thoughts remained consumed by the future. But there was something else now. A spark of hope deep within him. He wasn't alone in this fight. And with his friends by his side, no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would continue to press forward. They would face whatever came next, together. But as they walked, a sudden chill ran down Naruto's spine. His senses, sharpened by years of training, told him that something was off. The air seemed to crackle with energy, and the ground trembled ever so slightly beneath his feet. It was as if something, or someone, was watching them. Naruto paused, his eyes scanning the surroundings. Did you feel that? He asked, his voice tense. Sasuke, ever vigilant, looked around with suspicion. I felt it too. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed as he placed a hand on his chin. Something's wrong. I don't like this. Hinata, too, seemed unsettled, her Byakugan active as she scanned the area. I don't see anything. But something's definitely out of place. Suddenly, the ground beneath them split open. And from the dark rift that formed, a figure emerged, cloaked in shadow. It was tall and imposing, its features hidden by the swirling darkness that surrounded it. It didn't look like the Harbinger. But the aura it radiated was unmistakable. A power that made Naruto's blood run cold. The figure spoke, its voice a hollow whisper that seemed to echo in the air. The Harbinger has fallen. But your journey is far from over. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto's eyes widened. Who are you? He demanded, stepping forward. "What do you want?" The figure's eyes glowed a menacing red as it stepped forward, revealing a mask-like face, featureless except for the glowing eyes. It was an eerie, unnatural sight. "I am merely a herald. The true power behind the rifts has only just begun to make its presence known." Naruto's heart skipped a beat. The true power? What was this creature talking about? Who's behind this? Naruto shouted. "What do you want with our world?" The figure chuckled, the sound cold and distant. "You are but pawns in a game far larger than you can imagine. The end of this world is inevitable. Naruto Uzumaki. The only question that remains is whether you will live to see it." Before Naruto could react, the figure raised its hand, and in an instant, the world around them began to warp again. Reality itself bending as if it were nothing more than clay in the hands of a master sculptor. And in that moment, Naruto realized the true scope of the battle ahead. The war had just begun. The air around them crackled with unnatural energy, and the ground beneath their feet trembled as if reality itself was stretching and contorting. The shadowy figure raised its hand again, and this time, the distortion in the air was more pronounced. The very fabric of the world seemed to warp and twist like a mirage, creating a surreal, dreamlike atmosphere. Naruto's heart pounded in his chest as he stepped forward, ready to fight. His hand instinctively went to the hilt of his kunai. But he knew this wasn't a fight he could win with mere weapons. This was something different, something far beyond his previous battles. "Stay back," Sasuke warned, his eyes narrowing as he activated the Sharingan. The air around him shimmered with the power of his eyes. But even Sasuke seemed cautious, unsure of what to do against an opponent that could manipulate reality itself. The figure's glowing red eyes locked onto Naruto with an unsettling calmness, as though it could see straight through him. "You think you can stop this? A mortal like you?" Naruto clenched his fists, his blood burning with defiance. "I'm not a mortal. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I'll never back down." The figure tilted its head, its hollow laugh echoing like a distant thunderclap. "So eager to meet your end? So be it." With a flick of its wrist, a massive rift tore open in the sky, a swirling vortex of energy that pulled at the very air around them. From within the rift, dark tendrils reached out, snaking toward Naruto and his friends with blinding speed. The tendrils were like nothing they had ever seen, black, shifting, and pulsating with a strange power that seemed to distort the very laws of physics. As the tendrils descended upon them, the world around them seemed to blur, as if time itself was being bent. "Watch out!" Sakura yelled, her voice tense. She launched herself forward, but before she could get close enough to help, the tendrils twisted and coiled around her, pulling her off the ground. She screamed in surprise as the tendrils began to tighten. Naruto's eyes widened, his heart racing. "Sakura!" Without thinking, he activated the full power of 9 Realms King. Time around him froze, the world coming to a complete standstill. He dashed forward, moving faster than any of them could track, and in a flash, he was by Sakura's side. He reached out, his hand grabbing hold of the tendril that had wrapped around her. For a moment, he struggled. The dark energy of the tendrils fought against him, trying to pull him back into the rift. But with a grunt of determination, Naruto focused his chakra, combining the power of the 9 tails with the reality-warping abilities of his stand. The tendrils began to unravel and disintegrate under the sheer pressure of his energy, evaporating into nothingness. Sakura fell to the ground, gasping for air, and Naruto helped her to her feet. "You okay?" he asked urgently. She nodded, though her face was pale from the near-death experience. "Yeah. Thanks, Naruto." The figure didn't seem to be fazed by Naruto's intervention. In fact, it barely seemed to notice as it turned its gaze back to them, its red eyes glowing even brighter. "You're but ants beneath the weight of the true force that drives this world. You cannot comprehend the depth of what's at stake. You will all perish." Naruto's eyes hardened. "Not if I can help it." The dark figure raised both hands, and the vortex above them began to expand, drawing more of the world's energy into it. The rift seemed to grow with every passing second, consuming the land and the air. And soon, the very space around them started to fold in on itself. The ground trembled violently, and the air was thick with the oppressive force of the figure's power. Sasuke stepped forward, his eyes sharp with focus. "We need to stop this. Now." Shikamaru's voice broke through the tension. "I'm not sure we can. This power, it's unlike anything we've encountered before. But if we don't do something, it's all over." The rift continued to grow larger, distorting reality in ways they couldn't understand. The dark figure, still cloaked in shadows, raised its arms, and the vortex expanded with a terrifying howl, threatening to swallow them whole. Then, Naruto's heart raced with a sudden realization. He wasn't just fighting against this being. He was fighting against fate itself. The rift was more than just a portal. It was a tear in the very fabric of the universe. If he didn't stop it, everything they knew would cease to exist. "Hold on, everyone," Naruto shouted, his voice filled with determination. "We need to fight back. Together." Without waiting for a response, he summoned all of his chakra, his body glowing with the combined power of the 9 tails and his stand. Time itself began to warp around him as 9 Realms King activated, and in that split moment, Naruto reached into the rift, using the power of his stand to rewrite the very fabric of the space in front of him. His hand pressed against the rift's edge, and with a forceful push, he tried to reverse the distortion, to heal the tear in the universe. But the dark figure wasn't about to let that happen. With a sharp gesture, the rift pushed back, an overwhelming force that sent Naruto crashing into the ground. His body was slammed into the earth, his vision spinning as the energy of the rift battered him. "Pathetic," the figure sneered, its voice cold and full of disdain. "Do you truly think you can stop the inevitable? The end is already upon you." Naruto struggled to stand, his body aching from the immense power he had just faced. He could feel the rift pulling at him, trying to drag him into its depths. But there was one thing he knew for certain: he wasn't going to give up. Sasuke stepped forward, his expression unreadable as he unleashed a barrage of lightning-fast kunai, each infused with his chakra. They sliced through the air, but the dark figure waved them away with a flick of its hand, its power seemingly limitless. But even in the face of such overwhelming force, Naruto felt a surge of strength, a warmth in his chest that only grew stronger. It wasn't just his power alone. It was the bond he shared with his friends, the unwavering will to protect everything he held dear. "I won't stop," Naruto muttered, his fists clenched. "I won't let you destroy this world. Not while I'm still standing." The world around them continued to distort, but Naruto could feel something stirring deep within him. The same power that had carried him through countless battles. The will to never back down, no matter the odds. Suddenly, he felt a voice in his mind, calm but powerful. "You're the key." Naruto's eyes widened. It was the voice of the 9 tails. But there was something different about it. The energy he felt in his chest flared once more. And he understood. "You hold the power to rewrite fate itself. Use it." With a final shout, Naruto concentrated every ounce of his chakra and willpower, summoning the full strength of 9 Realms King. The air around him began to vibrate with an intensity that shattered the distortion in space, and time itself seemed to bend and collapse in on itself. Naruto's body shone with an otherworldly light as he reached out, not just to stop the rift, but to undo it entirely. The figure, sensing the overwhelming force Naruto was unleashing, hissed in fury. "You're a fool. You cannot defy the end of all things." But Naruto, with a powerful roar, plunged his hand into the rift once more, rewriting the very laws of existence itself. The vortex began to shudder, its edges cracking like glass as reality itself was mended, the tear in the universe slowly closing. With one final push, the rift vanished completely, and the dark figure's form flickered and faded into nothingness. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the battlefield fell silent once again. Naruto, exhausted but victorious, staggered to his feet. The rift was gone, and the creature that had threatened to destroy everything was no more. But as he stood there, breathing heavily, Naruto knew that this was only the beginning of a much greater battle. The true enemy had yet to reveal itself fully. The battlefield was eerily still as the last remnants of the rift vanished into the air, leaving nothing but the scorched earth beneath their feet. Naruto stood there, panting heavily, his energy drained after the intense battle. His body trembled from the immense strain, and the weight of what had just happened began to sink in. He had stopped the rift, but it was only a temporary victory. His friends slowly gathered around him, their faces filled with a mix of relief and concern. Sasuke, although appearing stoic as always, gave him a sharp look, almost as if trying to assess whether Naruto had truly overcome the threat. Sakura, ever the optimist, gave him a small but genuine smile, though her eyes were filled with worry. "That was close," she said, her voice strained. "Are you okay, Naruto?" Naruto gave a weak grin, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "I'm fine. Just a little out of energy. But we did it, right?" Shikamaru exhaled, his posture sagging as he observed the empty horizon. "Yeah, for now. But don't think this is the end. Whatever that was, it was just one part of something bigger." Naruto's expression shifted. He looked down at his hands, still tingling with the power he had unleashed. The energy had felt different. Not just the power of his stand or the 9 tails, but something deeper. A force he could barely comprehend. The feeling that there was more to this battle. Something far more dangerous than anything he'd encountered before. "Nod at him." Sasuke stepped up, his eyes sharp as ever. "You've grown stronger, Naruto. But that thing, whatever it was far beyond anything we faced. It's like it was toying with us. We don't even know who, or what, is truly behind this." Naruto nodded, looking into the distance as if searching for answers. The world around them seemed so calm now, but he could still feel the weight of the power that had torn it apart. It wasn't just a force of destruction. It was something far more insidious. Something that could manipulate the very fabric of their reality. He had won this round, but the true enemy was still out there, lurking in the shadows. Hinata, who had been standing quietly by his side, stepped forward, her voice soft but filled with concern. "Naruto, please be careful. You've been through so much already. Whatever's coming, we'll face it together." Naruto smiled at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. She always knew how to calm him when his mind was racing. "I know, Hinata. I promise. We'll face it together." But despite his reassuring words, there was an unease that lingered deep within him. His instincts told him that the darkness they had just encountered was only a fraction of something far more terrifying. He could feel the pulse of power still lingering in the air, like a storm waiting to break. Shikamaru rubbed the back of his neck. "So, what now? We can't just sit around and hope it doesn't happen again." "No," Naruto said, shaking his head firmly. "We need to find out who's behind this. We need answers. And we need to be ready for whatever comes next." Sasuke glanced at him, his expression unreadable. "You're not doing this alone, are you?" Naruto looked back at Sasuke, meeting his gaze with a fiery determination. "Of course not. We're all in this together. You, me, everyone. We'll figure this out as a team." The group shared a brief moment of silence, and then Sakura stepped forward. "Then we'll start by gathering information. We need to learn everything we can about those rifts, the creature, and who could possibly be behind this. This isn't something we can leave to chance." Naruto nodded. "Exactly. And I've got a feeling that whoever is pulling the strings isn't just after the world. They're after something bigger. Something far more dangerous." The thought hung in the air like a dark cloud, and for a brief moment, none of them spoke. The gravity of the situation was undeniable, but Naruto's resolve never wavered. He had faced countless battles before, and he would face whatever came next with the same determination that had gotten him this far. As they began to discuss their next moves, Shikamaru's brow furrowed. "There's one thing we should be worried about, though." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" Shikamaru pointed toward the horizon. "The Harbinger said something before he disappeared. He said we were pawns in a game. Whoever's behind this has been planning for a long time. And if that's the case," Naruto's eyes narrowed, "then we're not just up against one enemy. We're up against a whole damn system." Sasuke, ever the realist, didn't miss a beat. "We'll find them, Naruto. But we need more information. We can't keep charging blindly into this." Naruto clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'm not afraid of what's coming. I'll fight for my friends. I'll fight for everyone." The words seemed to hang in the air, But Naruto's friends knew he meant them with every fiber of his being. They had seen him grow from the stubborn, naive kid who had been alone to the fierce protector he was now. And even though they all knew the road ahead was uncertain, they also knew that with Naruto at the front, they would never back down. With that, the group made their way back to the Hidden Leaf Village, where they would regroup and plan their next move. The battle was over, for now, but the true war was just beginning. The journey ahead would test their strength, their bonds, and their very understanding of reality itself. But one thing was clear. No matter the enemy, no matter the challenges, they would face it together. And Naruto Uzumaki wouldn't stop fighting until every last one of them was safe.